So this is what someone brought me. If we could get everyone to take a seat, please. Need the old cub thing. We still got people coming in here. Good evening. If we could get everyone to take a seat, please. And just quickly before we start, if you would like to speak this evening, we would love to hear from you, but we just ask you to sign. There's a sign-up sheet, and that just helps us be a little more effective in managing the speakers list. So if you would do that, we would appreciate it. Ivy, is there any more people out there?
We have 2 more coming in.
Okay. So we're just a couple more people coming in. So just before we start, some of you may not have been to a council meeting before. So this is a special council meeting, and a special council meeting is a single item meeting. There are some procedural things that we need to do first, and one of which is that I will be asking council for a waiver of procedural bylaw to allow people to delegate. Normally we have 2 delegations at a meeting. This will allow unlimited delegations. We would ask, delegations are 5 minutes. We would ask you to respect that. There's a warning beep at 4 minutes. We will be taking notes. We have our planning staff here, and council members themselves will be taking notes as well. Typically, we would not go through a second time. In a council meeting, that's more of a public planning meeting. I suspect that we will, council will be forwarding this to a special public planning, statutory public planning meeting if we're looking at a zoning bylaw change, which allows for unlimited number of time for people to come back and speak. So if possible, we do appreciate your point of view. We do appreciate you coming out, and we are here to listen. But if you don't need the full 5 minutes, then we would appreciate that as well. So thank you very much. And I believe we've got everybody in our seats. So we'll start off. It is 5 after 7, Mr. Clerk. We are in council chambers Tuesday, May the 29th for a special council meeting. Council, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as has been circulated? Councillor Tom, thank you. Councillor Gartner, second. Comments or questions? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Councillors, declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, I would, before we start with our item, I would request a waiver of procedural bylaw to allow members of the gallery to speak for up to 5 minutes. Councillors Gartner and Maracas. Requires 2/3. All in favor, please. Opposed? That is carried. We will have a short presentation from Lawrence Cook, who has been working with this project, specifically along with Lawrence. I can't remember your title, Manager of Planning and Development? Is that close? Thank you. And Mr. Ramuno, who's the Director of Planning and Development Services. So we'll start with, well, that just got turned up, didn't it? Can you hear me okay out there? Good. We'll start off with Lawrence, who has a short presentation, and then we'll open up for delegates. When you come down to the podium, please, we would ask you to give us your name and your address, and you will have 5 minutes, and as I said, there's a warning beep at 4 minutes. So thank you very much. I will now turn it over to Lawrence.
22. Okay, good. All right. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. And tonight we want to summarize the Stable Neighborhood Study. And to start, I'd like to go over the background of how we get to where we are tonight. It all started in October in 2017 when council directed staff to conduct a study. And as we move further down in December, an interim control bylaw was also directed to staff. And on January 30th, 2018, an interim control bylaw was passed. And in February, we held a public open house to obtain feedbacks from the residents, and which leads to where we are here tonight, to report on the summary and the best practices and obtain next steps from council. So just quickly introduce the study area once again, and please note that there is an error on page 3 of staff report. Planning staff would like to apologize for the error of the characteristics of Regency Acres. So this slide is here to provide a more accurate description of the 3 study area. So at the top, labeled A, is the Aurora Heights neighborhood. Lot area of 600 meters, lot frontage about a medium lot frontage of 16.7 meters. And you see homes that are constructed between the 59 to 1985. The correction for Regency Acres is here as follows. The median lot area should be 670 square meters, lot frontage of 16.7 meters, and homes are constructed between 1959 to 1985. Labeled area C in the Town Park neighborhood, you've got a different sets of lot areas and frontages, and majority of homes are along south of Connaught Avenues were constructed between 1950 and the 60, with homes north of Metcalfe can go from mid-1850 to 1940. So in summary, the town's official plan has stable neighborhood policy to protect from incompatible forms of development. However, the definition in this official plan does indicate that new developments may not necessarily be the same as the existing buildings. The official plan also has a list of permitted uses, development policies, and design policies. In the staff report, staff compared the existing R3 zonings with other surrounding municipalities and noticed that their existing provisions are not far off from the town of Newmarket, Richmond Hill, and even King Township. So what are other municipalities doing about the same issues at hand? Well, planning staff found that 3 sampled municipalities had hired consultants and worked with staff and residents for over a year and a half to even 3 years on similar projects. In the city of Brampton, they amended their official plan to allow for a site plan process to occur. They added site-specific zoning and established an urban design guideline. In Halton Hill, they amended the official plan to include definition to protect the stable neighborhood, as well as 4 site-specific zoning categories. And in Newmarket, they simply added 3 site-specific zoning provisions. So what did they actually change in their zoning bylaw? Overall, in terms of setbacks, it's fairly similar to our existing provisions, but a couple of items. In Brampton, you'll notice that overall height measuring to the midpoint has a maximum 8.5 meters, whereas in our zoning bylaws, it's about 10 meters to the midpoint. And in Newmarket, for 1.5 to 2 stories buildings, the lot coverage was reduced to 25%, and the overall height of those at 10 meters, it is measured to the peak of the roof. Now, planning staff has summarized a list of comments we received, and they're quite extensive, but they do fall into two groups. Here's a list of comments that were received where residents who are requesting changes to protect the stable neighborhood. Without going through the extensive list, some of the major items is that the official plan and the zoning bylaws do not match, and there's discrepancies. Most residents felt that the older dwellings have less coverage and mature trees to provide shading, and changes need to be made immediately. And they felt that the new development should be reviewed and through a site plan application process. And of course, the other side of the coin, we have residents who request to maintain the existing provisions, and they've indicated that the new developments is a positive progress. They indicated family needs to have the ability to expand to the modern family sizes, and these decisions cannot happen overnight, and family needs time to plan for their futures. And there are other planning control aside from zoning bylaws. Planning staff outline a few items in the staff report, such as heritage districts, tree protection, demolition processes, and establishing urban design guidelines and site plan process. The next steps here we have after tonight, staff will be seeking for council's direction on either options here. Either proceed to a future public planning meeting to consider further site-specific changes and where they may apply, or not to proceed any further with the stable neighborhood study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. We will now open up for delegations. Ashita, if you could put the list up, please. So we have, at this point, 4 people. And first up is, and certainly we will open it up after this, but Peter Smith. So sir, if you could come to the podium, if you would please give us your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes. Once again, there will be a warning beep at 4.
Okay, hello. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Peter Smith. I live at 36 Seaton Drive in Aurora. I am the president of the Regency Acres Ratepayers Association. Rah-rah. To begin, I would like to share with you a brief history of our area. In 1957, Sterling Drugs announced plans to build in the southwest part of town, and 660 building lots were proposed. Regency Acre became the second subdivision built in Aurora, with a core area established between 1959 to 1961. The area was known as Regency Acres, and Regency Acres Public School was constructed during that time period. Although residential buildings continued in phases approximately 1976 and 1984-85, these new homes were always considered as belonging in our neighborhood. Residents of the area have identified with this subdivision for 60 years. We ask that council and the planning department acknowledge the unique features and characteristics which are so important to residents in this established neighborhood. We ask that definite boundaries for Regency Acres subdivision be officially recognized on town maps. This will be increasingly important if the town adopts a site planning process. Builders must know the boundaries of stable neighborhoods. The next part is views expressed here or outline some of the collective concerns from our association. The first one was, what is a stable neighborhood? The following definition was chosen for this discussion. Stable neighborhoods are established subdivisions or parts of town built 50 years ago with distinct characteristics of that time period, as well as areas of historic significance, which must be preserved and protected. In 2011, the Aurora Council passed the official plan, which outlined policies to protect stable neighborhoods from excessive development. The plan was approved by regional and provincial governments. 7 years later, the planning department is reviewing policies from other jurisdictions before revising our current zoning bylaws. The official plan designated several parts of town as belonging to the stable neighborhood classification. Regency Acres was identified as a mature subdivision. The core area was built around 1959 and featured small homes on large lots, which were very attractive to developers. The Regency Acres Ratepayers Association believes that new development is necessary to revitalize our established community. At present, monster houses are being constructed which are legal based on outdated bylaws. The majority of residents feel that this type of excessive development is not appropriate for our older neighborhoods. Two-story houses are a reality and will continue to be built in our subdivision. However, the new construction should be limited to 9 meters in height measured from the roof peak and lot coverage decreased. Developers and realtors must not dictate the character of a mature, established community. If nothing is done, the residents will be forced to live with the consequence of this ill-advised planning. Zoning bylaws must be changed to protect our stable neighborhoods and follow the directions outlined in the official guidelines. Time is running out before the elections, and we ask that our local politicians respect and support residents concerned. We sincerely hope that these bylaw issues are resolved soon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Alan Hanks. Well, just a sec, Mr. Hanks. Would council like to have the opportunity to question a delegate? We can. At this point, there's only 4 people signed up. So, Mr. Smith, I believe that some councillors have a question? No, we'll do this. We'll do it at the end. Just a sec. Mr. Hanks, I'm going to ask you to just give way to Mr. Smith there for a second. We're not entirely procedurally oriented here, you know. Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much, Mr. Smith, for coming this evening, and I appreciate the history that you bring forward for Regency Acres. Are you, just a question, are you original owner of your home? Just a question for me.
I'm not, but my wife is.
Oh, okay, that's great. No, thank you very much. And you made a statement. I appreciate your feedback. So you're looking at 9 meters of height is more reasonable than what we've seen occur. And you did mention lot coverage decrease. Mm-hmm. Anything in your mind in terms of what we see out there today? We have 35% lot coverage allowed. So.
Well, I'm really in favor of the Newmarket bylaws. They seem to be, they're measuring their maximum height from the peak of the roof. They also have a variable lot coverage, which I think is worthwhile.
Perfect. Thank you. And you did mention the definition of stable neighborhoods being homes built about 50 years ago.
That's my definition.
That's your definition. Okay, that's pretty young in my books too, so thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for delegating.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my questions were similar to Councillor Humphreys, so I just want to be clear just because I wasn't quite sure. So in your remarks, you mentioned a decrease in lot coverage, but you weren't specific, but you just indicated that Newmarket was more or less where you're kind of were thinking along those lines.
I think they're, if I recall, and I think the bottom line is 25% for 2 stories, and I'm not sure if it's 30% for, or 35% for a bungalow, but you've got the report.
Right. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, because you are representing the ratepayers, just to know what the collective ratepayers are interested in terms of provisions. And Councillor Humphreys mentioned it. Did you mention that 9 meters in terms of height was what you were asking for?
That was actually in the official plan.
It is, but is that something that you're advocating, or is it lower? I just want to know. I just kind of want to know where you guys are at with that as well.
I'm using that as a 9 meters as following the official plan.
Okay.
The peak of the roof.
Okay. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that that those were cleared up. Thank you very much for delegating.
Councillor Gardner. Oh, Mr. Smith, don't go away.
Thank you for coming again, Mr. Smith. The new market plan is specifying 10 meters for two-story. So that is where you differ on the new market plan?
I'm talking privately right now. I think that 9 meters would be nice. 10 meters, I wouldn't really vote it down, but I'm not in that position, and I can't speak for the members of the association.
Thank you. I'm a little confused. So it says, the official plan, the 2010, says 9 meters.
9 meters or maximum, and 3 stories. I've got the reference. I think it's 813F is the actual reference.
Thank you. And are you talking about the height to be measured to the mid-roof line as it is now? You're talking about to the top of the roof?
The maximum height as done in Newmarket. They define it as the height of the peak of the roof.
The peak of the roof. Thank you.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for coming and delegating. You did not mention setbacks, and I'm just wondering, do you feel that if there's the changes within the lot coverage, that would be significant enough that you wouldn't need to make any changes to the setbacks?
Mr. Smith?
I really haven't considered that, and I'm sure that other people would be in a better position to comment on that.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. And now we'll ask Mr. Hanks to come up.
I don't think that I have very much to add to what Mr. Smith, who is my next door neighbour, has had to say. But I've been a resident in Regency Acres for 60 years. My wife and I came when they had knocked $1,000 off the down payment, so it was very attractive to two people that were broke like we were. And for many, many years, of course, the subdivision stayed the same. There were the same kind of people, the same shape of houses, much less traffic than we see now, moving at a much slower speed than we see now. But we would ask that this sort of continuum be considered in the planning, because we have a monstrous looking house down at the bottom of Seaton Drive that I'm sure is well above the limits, at least it appears to be above the limits, and it just looks awful compared with all those nice little bungalows that we're all living in. So I would ask the Mayor and the people here that are looking at me at the moment to have a heart and try and keep our little nest egg just as we like to have it. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hanks? Mr. Hanks? It is summer, so we like to grill people. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much, Mr. Hanks, for delegating this evening. Can you hear me okay? You can hear me okay?
I have hard hearing. I've got my hearing aid in, but if you could speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'll shout like I do at home. Anyway, thank you very much for delegating this evening. And I'm going to ask, are you an original owner as well, being there for 60 years? Were you one of the first people in your home? Just a question.
At 60 years.
No, were you the first owner of your home?
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's beautiful. I love it. I think that's wonderful, and I appreciate you coming forward. My question for you, if there is going to be development, you know, it's going to happen, and hopefully not like that house down the end of the street, it's just too big. In your mind, if someone was going to move next door and do some changes, would you be okay with a little bit bigger and a little bit, you know, like in your mind? I would love your perspective. So we talked tonight a little bit about 9 meters from the peak of the roof, maybe perhaps a smaller, like, you know, instead of 35%, maybe lot coverage a little bit smaller, more contained. But do you envision some homes, maybe some renovations, additions, that type of thing?
Well, I would venture to observe that the people that have lived in the Regency Acres since I moved in were all fairly simple people. They asked nothing but to have a job and a home to come back from that job to, have enough food to get, have a stable mayor and council to guide the fortunes of the city or town, as it may be. And this has gradually been changing over the years. And of course they say progress is wonderful, but we can only look at Donald Trump and say, I wonder if that's a right statement. But I think that the average people are much more comfortable with things that they know. And the things that they know are the things that they've been familiar with for many years. And I would venture to say here that driving around Aurora now is horrendous because the posted speed in our subdivision is 40. And most people are doing about 65 to 70.
I know.
So everything is changing, and of course we're aging, and usually aging and changes don't go too well together. But however, I hope that council in their wisdom will be able to maintain some semblance of what Regency Acres looked like from the very beginning, and not have a lot of skyscrapers looking down at us. So
That's
thank
great.
you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. George Skouliakas, I hope I pronounced that correctly, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is George Skouliakas. I live at 54 McLenny Drive. Although my house, or I live in a stable neighborhood, I'm not part of the study area, but I wanted to make some comments tonight regarding the report of stable neighborhoods. I appreciate the report itself, and I would have liked to for the report to have the following, to include the following sections. One of them should have been included is to identify the impacts of the new infill developments, as was promised, I think, a few months ago, that would be a section in the report, and provide a list of options. It's been indicated in the conclusion that there's options, but reading the report, I didn't see any options. So basically, you know, some of the options that I would have liked to see included would be to calculate the current lot coverage of the existing dwellings within the stable neighborhoods and create a benchmark percent. Reduce the current lot coverage from 35% to a percent closer to the benchmark. Reduce the maximum height from 10 meters to allow lower, that's more compatible with the existing dwellings in the neighborhood. I don't agree with the reduction of 10 meters to 9 meters. I don't think that's enough. That's why I'm suggesting creating a benchmark. I think there's different types of housing within these neighborhoods. Some are bungalows, some are story and a half, some are respectably 2-story, but they're not the 10 plus meter of types. And respectfully also adjust front, rear, interior, side and exterior yards accordingly. So those are the two sort of sections I would have liked to see in the report. And in regards to the report, I have two questions. And I wanted to know, I fail to see how the policies in the report which address intensification apply to the stable neighborhoods. And I think, there's a lot of questions about incompatible development. We're not against new developments, but incompatible development. That should be clear. Those are my comments, and I welcome your questions.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for delegating this evening, and I appreciate your feedback. In fact, I remember your comments. I think you were mentioning about benchmarking. And so in your mind, your vision is, for example, Regency Acres, mostly bungalows, and you would go through and do an average calculation of all the existing homes today, and height, lot coverage, and then come back with a benchmark, and that's really something we should line ourselves up to?
That is correct. A benchmark will give you a range of the different housing type that's available now, or that's there now, and that will be compatible with what's there. So you're not changing, the You're not going directly to a 2-story or 2.5-story height, and you're basically taking what's there and you're just modifying your zoning bylaw to reflect what's there.
Perfect. And so, and just a quick question to that, because I think it's a great idea. So for example, say you take a benchmark and I purchase a property and I would like a 2-story, but right now there's a bungalow. At least I could build a 2-story that would average out in that area that would look appropriate.
That is correct.
And
so if it happens to be 8.5 meters for the average, it's 8.5 meters. It's not specifically going from 10 to 9. It's basically what's there, and it's an average of what exists now. Because we do have various lot sizes, various heights of buildings. So I think it's only fair that it's compatible. And that's what would the benchmark do, compatibility.
And that would allow, excuse me, through you, Mr. Mayor, that would allow the characteristic of the neighborhood to be similar, although changing a little bit, maybe the style of the house a little bit, but at least it won't be a sore thumb.
Correct. Right? Because right now what you have is you have a bungalow that's maybe 1,100 square feet, and you're building a house next door to it that's 5,000 square feet. The bungalow is maybe, 7 meters high, and you have something that's 10 plus meters high. So, the discrepancy between that particular existing house and the new development is too great. So, and in my opinion, going from 10 or reducing it from 10 to 9 is not enough. It's not going to address the issue.
Just to you, Mr. Mayor, and just from your comments that the report isn't including some of these specific details, well, from our perspective and sort of how the process goes, I could be wrong, but staff and ourselves would be taking this detailed information and hosting a public planning meeting. I may be jumping the gun here, Mr. Mayor, but maybe we go to another council meeting. But to speaking to you, because I'm used to him cutting me off, so that's why I do that. Just joking. But what'll happen is that the public planning meeting will give further documented feedback, and then a council meeting to make whatever changes occur. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I know you're probably frustrated.
That, but to that point, I think when the terms of the study were outlined, there were 3 areas there were 3 objectives, and if I can just, I think the objectives were number 1, to assess the characteristics of residential neighborhoods in Aurora. Number 2, identify impacts of infill development, and number 3, review existing municipal official plan policies and zoning bylaws provisions for the stable neighborhoods official plan designations. I didn't see some of those sort of outlined, objectives in the report.
Okay. No, I appreciate it. Well taken, and absolutely looking forward to our next steps. But thank you for coming forward. I think you have some great ideas, and looking forward to seeing some of these implemented. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Marcus?
And thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, George, thank you very much for coming and delegating. From what I've gathered from your comments is it's great, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's great that we have all this information as far as what the town of Newmarket, Halton Hills is doing and all of that. It's great to have that as a perspective and see what they're doing, but at the end of the day, what I'm gathering from your comments is that we need to do something that's specific to Aurora and for our communities, and so we need a made in Aurora solution, and am I correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, and I couldn't agree more.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Coulibass, for delegating. We've heard throughout this evening and in the prior planning meeting in February a lot about dimensions, things like footprint. Can you clarify in terms of is the first priority really the dimensions and the physical footprint and things of that nature, or is architectural control, the aesthetics, how much does that play into this, or not at all?
It's mostly lot coverage and height. So if you look at the existing lots and the coverage, you'll find that the majority, I've done some research, and the majority of the coverage right now is well below 20. So now, the bylaw allows for 35. So that's why you have such a big discrepancy, because currently a lot of the homes that are in the areas and sit on larger lots, but their coverage is 12, 14, 16%. And allowing 35%, including a height of 10 meters, it's very incompatible. So I don't have an issue with new developments and similar characteristics, or even new characteristics as in terms of how aesthetics, how they look. I have an issue with lot coverage and the height. If I may just add one more point, I think, planning doesn't just happen. Planning takes, you people take a lot of care, a lot of time to plan the neighborhoods. When you sit down and you plan something, you think about different types of housing and where you're going to put them, or where they're going to be developed. So in essence, you have different forms of housing, different types of housing, different densities. And what we're doing here is basically wiping out something in terms of the bungalows or the smaller housing, the affordable housing, and making it all homogeneous or the same. 2 stories, 3, 4, 5,000 square feet homes, which are perhaps available in other areas, but stable neighborhoods, in particular the study areas, they're not that type of homes. So I think we should take care of them and protect them for the future, because it also changes the mix of the housing within the town of Aurora. So if you allow these new builds to come in 10 years, all you're going to have is 2-story, 3,000, 4,000 square foot homes.
Councillor Kim?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Skoulibass. I wanted to clarify that because I've heard and I've read many, and we've read many emails in the last few days, and it talks about this house on Seton or Fairway doesn't look good, and looks and dimension seems to be synonymous. And so I wanted to just clarify whether the architectural control and the aesthetics, how much that plays in, and so thanks for responding to that. So I guess just to clarify then, whether you have a Craftsman home or a Victorian home or a Georgian, it doesn't matter what type of home so long as they're within the set dimensions. Is that correct?
Well, in a way, perhaps it's somewhat correct, but not 100%, because it has to fit into the character of the neighborhood. Just because it's a specific size, it doesn't mean that it fits. There are examples of new builds that look wonderful, and they blend into the neighborhood, and they are, they're brand new, they're efficient, they're aesthetically looking, but it's about the height and the lot coverage. That's what it's about.
Thank you. And two more comments and questions. I think I have enough time there. In terms of, we have 3 stable neighborhood areas. How would you treat them, if you were us, how would you treat them all in terms of the decisions that we're going to be making in the next couple of months?
I would say it's a lot of work for the town, and but what I would do is, because they are separate and distinct, I would create a benchmark for each neighborhood, so that new development will be infused into the specific neighborhood that you create a benchmark for. Because, you know, the lots on Regency Acres are different. I mean, they're very close, and I think when we were looking at the characteristics, they're somewhat close, but they're all different. So, I would do 3 separate benchmarks to address the 3 study areas.
And you know what, I have to agree with, I guess, most of you here. I'm not sure how many are here for the status quo, but I do agree that some of the homes that have been built, or most of the homes that have been built recently on Seton and Glass and Fairway, I've seen them, and they do not fit in terms of the dimensions. And I do wish that there was more graduated dimensions in terms of their built form. At the same time, you know, the biggest challenge we have on council is there are 2 things that we have been, what's the word here? We've been appointed to do, is to make decisions or to listen to residents and to also plan and strategize for the future. And sometimes they conflict. And, you know, in the 3.5 years I've been on council, how many times have I heard us and other residents be critical of previous council, from last council to 4 or 5 terms ago, saying, why didn't you buy this property at $100,000 an acre? We wouldn't have this problem about costs. Why didn't you designate this 3 terms ago? And no doubt, 3 councils from now, or 3 terms from now, we're going to be criticized for the decisions we've made. And I guess that's the position that we're in, and that's why. And we know that we're going to be in this type of position, and that's a challenge for us, is to think about the future, but at the same time think about the residents who live in the neighborhood today. And I do agree with you that those homes are out of character.
Can I bring you back to a question, please?
But I just want you, Mr. Kolivas, and others to understand that it's not about us not agreeing with you. It's just the challenges in terms of, do we plan for tomorrow? And it doesn't mean that it stays the way it is, but we're always going to be second guessed. But we're certainly going to ensure that staff do their homework, and we're going to have to do some critical thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gartner. No, I'd like Councillor Gartner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you tell me what you wanted to say?
Well, I was going to say that protecting stable neighborhoods is a future decision, and it's all about affordability and future. You know, you have to also think about the starter home, or the families that want to enter the market on a starter home. If you're changing the existing homes from 1,200 square feet, 1,400 square feet to 5,000, all of a sudden you're not going to have affordable homes. And the only place a new couple, or a couple with no kids perhaps, or someone who wants to start their life, you know, the only affordable thing would be maybe, you know, apartments. I mean, at this point, you know, these homes are starter homes, and they're affordable. you know, if you want to say that $850,000 is affordable these days, sure. But, you know, but creating a new house that's going to sell for $2 million in 10 years or 5 years down the road, it's basically, you're shutting out the affordability and you're changing the mix. That's basically what I wanted to say. So I'm saying protect stable neighborhoods.
Councillor?
Thank you. Do you also think that it's about respecting the heritage of the community and not destroying what has come before us? You have to answer that.
Correct. Again, I think, you know, when you plan a town, you put a lot of thought into it, and you're planning for different housing. And now if you start changing this particular housing mix, then you're going to be left with a homogeneous type of homes or dwellings. And you know, they're not going to be, everybody's not going to be able to live in Aurora, basically, in a house.
Thank you, and possibly neighborhoods without a lot of character. Can you please give me your opinion on measuring the height? Do you believe the height should be measured to the midpoint of the roof or the top of the roof?
I would have to say to the top. The height should be measured to the top because, you know, part of the impact is created by this unusual high roof lines. So, and you've got different types of roofs. You know, if you have a flat roof, then it doesn't really matter. But if you have a roof that's very peaked or it goes an extra, you know, 2 meters, well, it just defeats the purpose of having a maximum height. So I would say to the top.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. My question, over here. You mentioned and partially answered, I guess, my question that you'd like to see these changes so that the houses, quote, remain affordable. And then you mentioned that if you thought $850,000 was affordable, but just to push you on that a bit, what do you think is affordable? Well, because, okay, so how about I phrase it? I was born in town. I'm 31 years old. My wife and I rent. We cannot afford to buy a house in Aurora, whether it's 1,200 square feet or whether it's 5,000 square feet. $850,000 is not affordable, in my opinion. So, but I don't think that the goal of this, and this is my question, no one should be advocating for, in my opinion, reduction of or stagnation of property values. And I don't want that because even though I'm priced out of the market as it is now. I mean, this is the town I grew up in. And so what I'm trying to get out of you is that you're saying we want to keep the houses affordable. Well, my point would be they're already not affordable for people like myself. It's a starter home at $850,000 is not an affordable house.
Okay, let the gentleman answer, please.
I was just going to say that 800,000 was just a number that I just threw out. I mean, you know, you can get a house at 450. Yeah, yes, you can.
I mean, attached. I've been looking in the market. I mean, maybe I've missed them.
Any real estate agents in here? No.
Yeah, well, and I'm not trying to get combative. I just think that we should be looking at ways at which. So we just kind of derivated a little bit into property values, and I just think that kind of is a bit of a distraction when we're talking about this because even the region has the York region defines affordable housing at a number that's much higher than I think most people would consider affordable, including people like myself. My wife and I have a young child. And one more on the way, and to the idea to spend even $500,000, $600,000 on our first home is quite high. So I just think we should stop looking at it from maybe keeping property values down because they're already astronomical, and I just think it gets us kind of bogged down in an area where it doesn't really help the conversation with respect to setbacks and height. I don't think it should be about what the property values are because they're already quite high.
Affordable could be, maybe it's not for yourself or your family, but, someone else was looking to get into the marketplace at $650,000, that's affordability for them. I mean, if we change that bungalow to a two-story, $1.7–2 million house, it's not affordable it excludes it in a bigger market. So when I say affordability, I'm saying keep it sort of reasonable with what's in town. $650,000 versus a $2 million house in another area, that's affordable. But by changing it, then you're becoming like the other area.
Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to ask this question because the reason I want, and you've done a whole bunch of research, have some great perspectives, like everyone in this room, and I'm going to ask the question, and no one kill me for it, but I have to ask it because we were here last term when we were trying to. Some people boo me at this, but we were trying to make the Southeast Heritage area a designated area. We had probably a room like this size in full support when we started the process. It was amazing. I was like naively going, this is the best thing ever. The neighbors all excited. And all that meant was that the homes had to, pretty much stay as much as possible, though it didn't mean you couldn't do anything, but that you had to adhere to some rules. You had to rules in terms of the architecture, your neighbors adjacent, if it was a heritage property. They came to pass it through and it was awful. It would say 60-40 vote. It was horrible. It made the neighbors start fighting. I'd never seen anything like it. I hope the neighbors are talking now because it was really a horrible thing. And we thought we were doing a really good thing, trying to keep the neighborhood the way it was. This is a fact. This happened. Some of the people are in the audience today that were there. Let me finish. So their main concern is you want to tell me what I can do with my property, my investment, and when I go to sell, I have to identify to the buyers these rules. You're not doing that to me. And I'm telling you, I got calls that were pretty threatening. And how dare you, Town of Aurora, tell me what my retirement plans are going to do for the future. So I just want to put it out there. I think it's important that we do things like this. It's important to make the neighborhoods look beautiful and as close as possible to what they are today. But I hope we don't get into that situation. I want to pull it out there because I'm afraid of that. Because for me, the monster homes scare me. They're not right. But am I going to get a bunch of people in here fighting the other side? So we need to do this properly and do it so that it looks good and everyone's happy and you still keep your property values solid. That's all I wanted to say. That's all. Thank you. And I'm doing that from, let me finish?
Yeah.
I'm doing that from a positive perspective because you want to keep the value of your home, the pride of your home. It's our lifelong savings. We're all trying our best, right? And you want to make sure development continues in a proper way, just to protect yourself.
I'm not asking for restrictions.
Good.
I'm asking for conformity. I'm asking for what is similar to the neighborhood, right? So a new development, and there's plenty out there that conform to the height and the lot coverage, have nothing to do with, oh, you can't take this window or you can't move this front porch or whatever. I'm not talking about restrictions. I'm talking about compatible development within the neighborhoods.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know why my mic is off. Did you shut me off again, Mr. Mayor?
I didn't touch it.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I think that's fantastic, and that's what we're here for. And I think if we keep that message clear, we'll all be on the same page and not have that kind of situation happen. Thank you.
I'm going to, well, first of all, you mentioned affordability. And affordability is a very touchy point in, well, actually Ontario. The CMHA actually defines, the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Association, actually defines affordability in this area somewhere just slightly, and I apologize, I don't remember the exact number, but it's just a bit more than $450,000 for a house. You might buy a condo for that. You will perhaps get a townhouse. You will not get a detached house. So affordability is a very, very challenging topic, and Councillor Tom and I have had the discussion as to who even came up with the $450,000. So I just want to point that out. But I'm going to challenge you on the restrictions, because right now, and I did own a house in Regency Acres, I had the right to build up to a 35% lot coverage. So if we restrict that to whatever that number is, if we change that number, we are automatically putting restrictions on that.
The respect, I mean, the bylaw doesn't mean that because it says 35, it doesn't make it right. The zoning bylaw.
Time out.
the
You
zoning
said you're
bylaw
not,
was-
you
Can I
said you're
finish,
not
please?
putting restrictions on. I'm
No.
allowed at this point. It may not, and we can agree or disagree on whether or not it's correct or right.
Okay.
I'm simply saying that if we're looking at changes, it is indeed restrictions, and which is fine as long as everybody is aware of that.
Okay. I accept that, but it doesn't make the zoning bylaw correct at 35%, right? You know, things do change over time. The official plan and the zoning bylaw are not in sync. So, you know, something's off. So the official plan has policies to protect stable neighborhoods. The zoning bylaw that was just recently approved does not, or is not doing that.
I'm not arguing that point, sir. I'm merely pointing out that if I lived in that area, I have certain
But if you
allowances.
if you want to protect stable neighborhoods, you have to change the zoning bylaw. It's as simple as that.
And that changes, and we can obviously have this discussion all night. That changes what people are allowed to do right now. Therefore, those are restrictions.
That's why we're here. We
Yeah.
know that.
Well, what I can tell you is that we also get a lot of emails from people who are not here. And
Yeah,
there's,
that's
matter of fact,
fine.
there was people who, hold on. Oh, there's a lot more people who are not in favor of changes, and that is their right, as is your right, to ask for changes. And that's why we're here to listen to all those, and we also take the emails. So our job, and Councillor Kim spoke to it, is balancing that out, and that's why we're here to do that. So I'll thank you, sir.
One
Go
final
back.
comment. If you want to protect stable neighborhoods, as indicated in the official plan, you have to change the zoning bylaw.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you.
Mr. Aislinn.
Good evening. My name is Neil Aslan. I live at 27 Royal Road. Ladies and gentlemen, council, Mr. Mayor, and town staff, I'm here to speak on behalf of the Town Park Area Resident Ratepayers Association. Early this week, we sent you our position on the stable neighborhoods issue as it pertains to our specific area. It is reflective of the one-on-one meetings we have had with you, our consultation with our ratepayer members, and various industry professionals that we have been speaking with. In general, we have been delighted with the support that we have received from all of you through our one-on-one discussions. It appears that we can all agree that we need a common sense set of bylaws that encourages compatible development for new housing. We have always and continue to maintain that we welcome new development, and we welcome this opportunity to shape how new development can be undertaken. I am sure everyone here is familiar with our area, and that alone speaks to its unique identity within the town as a whole. We are home to Town Park, the Armory, the new cultural precinct. Many pass through our neighborhood to use GO Transit. We are essentially the heart of Aurora. That said, we residents are a passionate bunch. We support anything local. We gather in the park, on street corners and sidewalks, chat over fences and through hedgerows. All the while, we understand and respect the need for privacy of our own property. Some have grown up on these streets and continue to live here. Some have lived here many decades, or like me, are newcomers. None of this can be measured in a metric, or will ever appear in a report. There is a social infrastructure that hinges on this neighborhood, and many of us feel that insensitive development can unravel this precious fabric that has been woven over time. We have set out an immediate action plan that recommends what the Residents Association would like staff to include in the bylaws. This plan addresses concerns that have been expressed to us. Here are some of our concerns that we feel the staff should consider for new development. This is not our action plan. Some of the concerns are excessive lot coverage, excessive building scale and height in comparison to the existing housing, overexpressive or ostentatious building styles. We would like to embrace the modesty of the existing neighborhood homes. We feel we see the need for adequate side yard setbacks to allow for maintenance, access, etc. We're concerned with the number of garages that dominate the facades of new builds, and we want to encourage simpler roof lines, lower pitches, discourage these boomtown and elevated style front roofs. We want to encourage front porches, discourage faux architectural elements such as dormers and blacked out false windows. We encourage traditional material uses, and we can say, brick houses or stone houses or board houses, but we don't encourage the use of multiple and excessive types of cladding materials. We encourage sympathetic scale and ratios of elements such as windows and door openings. There's a lot of side facades that are just extensive brick walls that may have one or two small openings. We would also like to adhere to the current tree protection bylaw to maintain our existing urban forest as much as possible. Now on to my action plan, and I'll try to get through this quickly. There's a lot to chew on. We agree with the borders as defined in the study. And as far as we would like to see everything go through site plan control, but delegate that to the staff. In terms of roof heights, a max height of 8.5 to the midpoint for a two-story and 6.5 to the midpoint for a bungalow. Setbacks, minimum rear yard setback equal to 25% of the depth of the lot, or the minimum rear yard depth required by the zone designation, whichever is greater. This would address any anomalies in the neighborhood in terms of small or excessively large lots. I guess I'm out of time. I'm almost
If you could wrap
through.
up just quickly, Mr. Asplund.
Sure. Side yard setbacks, we're happy with the 1.5 existing minimum. Lot coverages, 30% for two stories, 35% for bungalows. Driveways and garages, 3-meter max driveway width to maintain the existing streetscape and landscape features. Rear detached garages encouraged for double garages. We feel our changes are moderate and not far-reaching. In fact, they embrace what already makes this neighborhood what it is. Thank you.
I assume you've submitted that to staff.
We have submitted this to everybody here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys.
Councillor Gardner, I think.
Councillor Gardner, did you?
You sure? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for coming this evening, Mr. Aislinn, and I appreciate all the work everyone's put into this evening, particularly Town Park area, which I just love and adore. I love all of Aurora, but Town Park, we have so much happening there, and the homes are so incredible that I really support. One of the things I hear loud and clear in your suggestions is there's truly an architectural vantage point here. It's what the development around that area really conforms to more of an older heritage type feel, and garages in the rear, and having the roof lines very simple and straight in terms of the heritage aspect. 8.5 mid-range is very specific, 6.5 for bungalows. Lot coverage 25%, give or take. It's for two-story, 25% lot coverage for two-story? Sorry, I want to make sure I got that right.
Two-story was 30, I think.
30, okay,
yeah,
25
and 35 for a bungalow.
35 for bungalow, okay, perfect, thank you. And I know you presented this information as well. And again, I like your comments on landscaping and just keeping it, this weekend was really a great weekend for that area, and the ambiance of the houses around it, it just makes it. So I really support that. I mean, the ideas, but in that area in particular, it's a gem that we need to try to keep our best to protect. So thank you for our hard work, and we hear you loud and clear. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for being here tonight. In your speech, you were talking about, to use the term, insensitive development, and I just want to get a sense of what you mean by it. For me, that kind of says, causing, say, adverse effect on the surrounding neighbors or properties. But what did you mean by that term, insensitive development?
I think, as we've all agreed here tonight, at least what I've been hearing from the speakers, that it really is the scale, the height, and the lot coverage that speaks to that. However, there are a few elements, like what I pointed out, where we have two-car garages that are flush with the facade, and that basically takes up, you think that's 20 feet of the frontage of the front of a house, so it's half the front, and that means half the front is a driveway, is paved. My lot is 55 feet wide. I have a 10-foot driveway, which means I have 45 feet of landscaping, which added on to my neighbor, and you continue down the block. The predominant feature looking down our street is trees and landscape and not houses. Our houses are modest, they're fairly traditional, and they're all pretty unique unto themselves. We don't have a lot of repetition of styles. So anything incompatible would be large and would sort of have this, would change that streetscape. And it's really the context, and context is something that architects and planners work with. So it's just recognizing our context in terms of being compatible.
I know, I appreciate that. I mean, often when we've spoken, we talk about suitability and compatibility and stuff, and so just was the terminology I just wanted to be clear on, so appreciate your comments.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much. You've put a lot of thought. The Ratepayers Association has put a lot of thought into this. Could you repeat what you said about the height?
Just now, or in what I read? I think that the 10-meter height, and then I think we've been working with 11 meters in a committee of adjustment. We figured out that that's probably about 40 plus feet once you get from midpoint to the top of the roof. The average house in our neighborhood, and we've been seeing a few new builds that are coming in around 8.5, some are less, 8.3 to the midpoint. So you can go higher than that, but generally, that ends up around 9 meters. We were advised not to go for a max height and stick to the midpoint calculation, because that would not allow people to build flat roof houses that go to the absolute height. Then the massing would appear overbearing, but by having a lower midpoint, we're reducing the massing with a roof with an angular plane. I don't know if this makes sense, but what you're doing essentially is taking the height and tapering it off as you go up. So we feel that because most of the homes in our neighborhood were, depending what street you're on, built in the 19th or early to mid 20th century, they're not excessively high. So that's really something that immediately sticks out, is the height. I don't know if I answered your question, but...
Councillor?
I'm not sure you did. I really liked what you had to say, though. So right now, the zoning bylaw says 10 meters to the midpoint of the roof. So, and the official plan says 9. So are you saying that the midpoint is an acceptable measurement as long as it's lowered?
It's lowered. We were convinced, and I think we remain convinced, I'm speaking on behalf of our committee and also the whole neighborhood, that 8.5, we end up in a place when we have 8.5 that is compatible. We feel 9 9 meters for the midpoint, what we've seen that is 9 meters is not compatible. And so that's how we arrived at that. Because once you get to 9 meters for the midpoint, it can end anywhere above that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have a quick question just for clarity to Mr. Amuno first before I ask.
Sure.
May I do that? Mr. Amuno, the Northeast Heritage District, which is Part 5 designated, the zoning for the Northeast Heritage District is a garden variety, I think it's R3. Can you comment on that and just make sure I'm correct?
Mr. Amuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. The Northeast District has the same zoning, the R3 zoning, with the same standards that we've been speaking about tonight. 10-meter heights, 35% lot coverage, same standards, same zone category.
Thank you. So, Neil. Neil and I sit on the Heritage Committee with Councillor Gardner and many others, and we're certainly, speaking for the three of us, very passionate about preserving heritage in our town, and certainly the heritage character of the neighborhoods, certainly around Town Park, in the Northeast Heritage District. I live on Temperance Street. We have a lot of high concentrations of homes built in the 19th and early 20th century. So in your delegation, you do mention height, you do mention lot coverage, but you also mentioned a number of factors which probably fall under our Northeast District Heritage Conservation Plan, which talks a lot about compatible forms of architectural styles. It talks a lot about building materials. It talks about garages set to the backyard and so forth. And obviously, we don't have to relive the history of last term. I wasn't sitting on council at the time, where council voted down a similar heritage conservation district in the Town Park area for the homes in, presumably in your neighborhood. I'm not sure if Royal Road was on it or not. So I guess my question is, given that, so putting aside the height and the lot coverage, because obviously the Northeast Heritage District has the same provisions as your neighborhood, yet they have the protections of everything else that you talked about. I guess, which do you think, and I know this is a little bit off topic, but bear with me, which would you think would protect your neighborhood more? A Heritage Conservation District or changes to the zoning bylaw? Because I think that my personal thought is that it's going to be a lot harder to regulate in the zoning bylaw the types of materials, for example, you can put in a new build. Obviously, the zoning is setbacks and lot coverage and height. So, but given that the Northeast Heritage Conservation District has been protected, Part 5 under the Heritage Act, and your neighborhood is not, which do you think would be more effective in maintaining the heritage character of the neighborhood? Would it be changing the zoning bylaw or imposing a Heritage Conservation District?
It's a big question. Changing the zoning bylaw. And I can expand on that if you would like me to. I think that within the Heritage District plan, I think we could actually, let me backtrack. I think we could actually tailor our bylaws more effectively through a stable neighborhood protection or a stable neighborhood set of bylaws, and eliminate a lot of the things that the heritage designation imposes. And I think that it works both ways. I think in the Heritage District, we're also building very large scale, overscale, very tall houses. Maybe they're more compatible in that district because the houses northeast are quite grander. We have a lot of workers' cottages. Where I live, they are, mid-century bungalows and story-and-a-half houses. So I think the heritage thing, we're beyond that at this point, and I think that in terms of the material control and all that, we don't see that being put into bylaw. We just see that as sort of an oversight that staff can use when assessing site plan, and using some discretion for how the materials are used and whether they're appropriate or compatible.
Just to follow up then, so our official plan currently talks about the ability for council to have site plan control. Are you advocating that council put site plan control for your area of town?
The site plan control being delegated to the staff,
Okay.
to the planning department.
Right, but you would like, right now, we don't have the town, I should say, does not have site
Yeah,
plan control, and you would like to see that implemented.
Yes, some form of site plan control, yes.
But just not the same way that it is with the Heritage Conservation District, where you apply through the Heritage Advisory Committee. You'd rather site plan control that with authority delegated to staff.
Yeah, at the staff's discretion.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to just ask that question. I know it was kind of a big one, but again, good to see you, Neil, and thanks for coming out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We do have another speaker, Callie Citron.
Hi, thanks for adding me to the speakers list. So I'm Callie Citron, and I'm a young professional. I've always lived in York Region, have a very long commute down to work. I bought in the Aurora Heights district about 3 years ago, and I currently live in my basement and I rent my upstairs. It was my only way to get into the property market. And you know, when I bought in the Aurora Heights area, I didn't want to just buy a starter home. I wanted to buy my forever home. It's a great neighborhood. I like York Region, despite my commute down to the downtown. But by living in the basement and renting my upstairs, it kind of gives a win-win, helps some, you know, eventually as I grow, as my family grows, my fiance and I will be able to rent the basement and live upstairs, but we also wanted to be able to have future opportunities by possibly adding a second floor and a garage. Now, that being said, I don't want to build an ugly monstrosity, which is an entire box that takes up my entire property. I want to be a good neighbor, but I also want that opportunity to be able to grow and still be able to rent out my basement, which legal, registered, you know, not an issue, just for the record. You know, I take pride in being a good landlord and everything else. But I just wanted to make sure that I will have those future opportunities as well, right? So whether it's architectural control or some restrictions-ish to provide a little bit of flexibility, but still be a good neighbor and still be able to, you know, have a beautiful home in a beautiful neighborhood. I think we just need to be careful that as we add restrictions, no matter what way that ends up being, that we still can provide that win-win situation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Don't go away. Councillor Humphreys, please. Don't go away.
Yes.
Thank you. You're like the most perfect developer there is. No, thank you very much. Absolutely, and that's the intent. Like I think that everyone feels that way. That keeping the look and feel, but absolutely giving you the freedom to do what you would love to do for your forever home and your family. And you know, you sound like exactly the type of individual that we would want to care, like you care about your neighbors and you want to make this your home for yourselves, and we have to make sure that there is that flexibility that allows you to do that. So I hear you for sure. That's why, as Councillor Kim said earlier, it's a very like balancing act. Make sure that we do the right things, keep the integrity of the neighborhood, while you can allow to make a beautiful home changes. So we have seen some beautiful homes that were updated recently, and very proud of them, you know, compared to some of the others. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best, and it's so great to hear your story. So
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
It's worth it. It's worth the commute to live here, right?
It absolutely is, yes. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. I think we have
Don't go away.
More questions, sorry.
Councillor Gartner.
Yes.
Hi, thanks for coming. We actually haven't heard from very many people in your area. I think 3 or 4 emails. Absolutely. Certainly my intent is not to prevent you from doing a renovation on your home, even building a new home. But we just want your home to be in keeping with the neighborhood. And I think that that's exactly what you would do. So thanks for coming.
Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming and bringing your perspective. I think it's great to hear from that perspective about allowing to evolve and grow. And I think everyone around here, everyone in the audience believes in that same thing, is allow for that. the growth to occur within our neighborhoods. But I think that if we do make changes, we do have to do them right, as you stated. But I think it's not about restricting. I think it's about respecting, allowing for respect to occur within our community and within our neighborhoods. And I think you can agree with that. And at the same time, it still allows you to grow. So, thank you very much.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mrs. Citron, for coming out and delegating. We certainly haven't heard from many, if at all, residents from Aurora Heights. And so while you're here, can you share with us how some of your other neighbors might feel? Have you spoken to other residents in Aurora Heights? And what's the, is there a general consensus, or can you clarify?
I'd be able to speak for everybody. I mean, I know I missed the initial meeting myself because the letter came in and I was on vacation and I didn't get a chance to get my comments in until I got this notice tonight. I think perhaps there's a way, if you maybe leaf drop or ask people to email more comments, perhaps that could work. Even though I moved in 3 years ago, I also spent 2 years up in the high Arctic for work and then just came down, so I haven't had too much of an opportunity to meet too many of my neighbors. But I have noticed that, especially on the Algonquin area, there's some houses that are more square, some houses that are more in keeping, and I think there's another house where they just added a nice second floor, but it doesn't actually look so out of place. So I can't speak on other people's behalf. I'm sure they would have a comment to it, but I think if we keep kind of a common sense lens to the way these houses will be developed, then I was looking on realtor.ca or whatever, and you see people advertising their kind of unkept up bungalows with, 3,500 three-car garages, permits ready to go, permits already approved. So, I think developers have an eye on the area, and now it's just a matter of how do we really make sure that any new development is in keeping with a nice neighborhood, but still allowing a little bit of flexibility. And thank you. And at the same time, if we can keep our basement apartments to code and all those kinds of things, then we also allow for a little bit of affordable housing and some options as well.
That's it. Thank you very much for coming up.
I don't think I've finished my...
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. And thank you for your comments. I have to say that a homeowner that lives in the basement, rents out the main floor, it takes the desire to move up to another level. And so that's the first time I've heard that, and that's ingenious of you to use that structure to be a homeowner. I think that, and I just want to comment on all the things I've heard, is that, we heard about just a couple minutes ago about respect, and it's quite clear that not everyone respects their neighbors who live next door and want to build that is more homogeneous as opposed to something so directly, obtuse. But and the challenge for us is to, what size level or what box level gives everyone a good size to be flexible at the same time, be congruent with the rest of the stable neighborhoods. And so I guess we'll come to that at our next meeting when we hear the options from staff. Thanks again for delegating.
Thing to that. So I think sometimes how the house fits on the lots could have a lot to do with that. So for example, if I have, a two-car garage and it's tandem, from the street perspective, you only see the one car, so it doesn't look so imposing, right? My neighbor's not going to look at a giant structure or anything like that. So I think there's ways of being a little bit creative and still allowing a little bit of both, but it's really about the look and feel of the neighborhood and keeping the look and feel of the neighborhood while still allowing for expansion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got 4 additional speakers. Next up, Janet Gilliver. Janet.
I live in Regency Acres, and I have for 56 years. My parents were in the home that I'm in now, and I bought it from my brothers when my mom passed away in 2011. I don't think we're here for the status quo. We appreciate an owner's right to make changes to their property. However, we are here to have bylaws changed to match the official plan that is to be compatible. Tonight's topic is not trivial and shows by the number of people who have turned out tonight and to all the other meetings as well. We ask the audience or attendees to give a show of hands as to who believes the zoning bylaws need to be changed. Who believes them? And for those who believe that they should remain the same, to show your hands. And how long have you people that don't believe changes should be made, how long have you lived in Aurora?
Okay.
Is that irrelevant?
Could you?
Okay. We ask the audience, okay, so those for changes, now's the time for councillors to make those changes happen. We are not averse to change, but the changes need to be respectful of those living in the areas. On several occasions, I have requested that the building department provide proof that these homes that are being built, like say on Child Drive or Seton Drive, come on out and measure the lot to the building that's being built now to prove that that lot is having a 35% lot coverage. To date, nobody has come forward and honored that request. I ask again, can this be arranged at the one on Seton Drive in Aurora? And that's pretty much what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much. Councillors? Councillor Humphreys?
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for coming. I can tell you're passionate in your original Aurora. My husband's fourth generation Aurora on Denning Avenue. We're going to be moving back to my mother-in-law's house as well. He's an only child, and it's great that way. I can't wait to be coming back into the heart of Aurora. I mean, all of Aurora is Aurora. And I understand that, you know, look, I live with a family who's old Aurora, and, you know, but I believe that everyone coming into this town deserves the same, you know, sort of honor that they're buying a house and investing their love in. So I get that we've been here forever, but I also have respect for everyone who's purchasing here. So for me, I respect everyone's opinion, and I love to hear it all, right? I do appreciate you've been hit hard, I can imagine. From your perspective, and I'm going to ask this of you, is we've heard a lot of discussion today about, you know, how high the building should be or how much lot coverage, or, you know, what in your mind, because you're living there, you're going to live there hopefully forever, 100 years from now, what would you like the evolvement or evolution of your neighborhood?
Sorry.
Yeah, so if you don't mind.
I would say 8.5 meters
peak?
At the peak.
Okay. 8.5 meters peak. And lot coverage for a two-story or a bungalow, do you like what you've heard? You know, in terms of 25%, 30%?
30%, 25%.
Okay. So again, you're not adverse to
I'm not adverse to
changing
change.
or updating or brand new home, as long as we have some of the, so it look and feel like your neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I would love to do some changes to my home, but unfortunately,
when we can,
I can't
right?
afford it either.
Exactly. We know the vote, right? But you know, hopefully we win the 60 million this Friday. We can change that.
Hey, I could have sold out and sold it for 1.3 million, and somebody would have put a monster home there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't mean anything. This is Aurora. You can't buy that anywhere. So thank you very much for coming with your opinions. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you for coming. Could you please say your last name again?
Gilliver.
Thank you. So you did say that there are some homes that you felt are overly large, even according to our zoning bylaw at the moment, and that you've spoken to planning to come out and measure them? Yes. What was the answer?
I haven't received an answer. I did speak to Mr. Kim the other day, and he was going to try to arrange that, but I don't know if that's up to him. I have no idea.
Thank you. And we are going to have a chance to speak as a council. I'll address that then. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Gilliver. Thank you for coming out. Next up, Richard Perry.
Richard Perry, 10 Banff Drive, Aurora. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for having this meeting. I think it's something that's well past time to be talking about some of this. The reason that my wife and I are here is because we recently decided that well, to begin with, let me give you a little history. I've lived in this town for over 60 years, my whole life. I grew up here. I went to school here. My wife did. My wife's family have been here for over 90 years. So we have history here. I like this town. I want to stay here. I don't like the way it's gotten. It's gotten too big as far as I'm concerned. But I remember when it was very small. We have a large family. We have a lot of grandchildren. We have 6 daughters. We recently decided that, you know what, we want to stay in Aurora, but we want to add an addition. So we wanted to change the way our house looked, keep it the same, but just add on 12 more feet on the side of our house. We were appalled to find out that the side of our house is actually the frontage of our house because we're on a corner lot. Our address is 10 Banff, not Devon's Drive. And so we got told, we found out about this, so we looked into it, and we just find a lot of the things different. I don't have a problem with the 35-foot or 35% coverage. The 10 meters, I think, is high. I think it really needs to be looked at. We don't want to go up. We just want to go out a little bit to have a nice big room that we can have all our family in. It's just appalling what's happened to this town. There's all kinds of big homes being built that have tons of coverage of the property, and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. So this was a very nice pleasure to find that the town was actually looking at it and going to do something about it. But I don't think what we want to do is stop people from wanting to live in this town. Therefore, if they need a minor extension added onto that town, onto their house, as long as they keep it within the conformity of what we have, and that's all we want to do, I don't think that's what the town really wants to do. I don't have a problem with the 35, as I said, percentage. I think it's fine. I've got a problem with these great big houses, and I've got a problem with all the new subdivisions where you can barely walk in between a house. Like, I like to have some room around me. I just think that a lot of the people that have spoken tonight have a lot more information and have spent a lot more time looking into this than I have. But I think they've hit on something that's very, very important. Because you drive into, like, we're in Aurora Heights. We've been there, well, I bought my first house on Springburn Crescent, which is just, it was built after Regency. I grew up on Regency. And I drive around and I see all the changes, and I see all these great big houses. We got one around the corner on Hill they just built, and it's got a flat roof on it. They tore the old house down, and they've got this great big thing on this corner, or on this pie-shaped lot with a flat roof on it. It's not conforming to the area. And I think you have to have stuff conform to the area. I think that's very, very important. But I think you've got to also allow people to add additions as long as they're proper within the area and conform to what the housing is in the area. I guess that's about all I have to say. You know, I love this town. My wife loves this town. We've been here a long time, and we don't want to have to move just because we can't add a little addition to our house.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Got Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for coming forward tonight and sharing your perspective as well. And I do hope you're going to be able to work with staff to get what you need done in your property. Because you know what, you got a great family. You need to have that kind of space, and I'm sure it will conform to the neighborhood that you need. So it's kind of surprising when you find something like that out on your lot after all these years. So I do hope that you continue to move forward with town. Staff's great. They'll hopefully find a way that we can make this work for you and enjoy your beautiful home for the next 100 years. I hope so. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing your point of view. It's not a point of view that we've really heard yet. And also, the history was very important. Thank you.
Sorry?
The history you gave us was very important, too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Peter Rankel.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I think I may be able to provide some insight. I'm not exactly sure. I know I'm definitely not on the far right of this or the far left of this. I'm somewhere in the middle. But just to give you some history, my name is Peter Rankel. I live at 5 Cameron Avenue with my wife and my 15-year-old son there. I built a house in the Old Town designation. We're just south of Town Park. We built a house there 12 years ago. We were well within all the current parameters in terms of lot coverage, setbacks, etc. I believe we ended up with somewhere, it's around a 2,800 square foot house. I was very conscientious of the architectural style. It's an old Georgian style replica house. The fenestration is 5/4. It's very traditional. We've actually had people come up to us and say, wow, what a great renovation, and they're just shocked when they find out it's a brand new house. So it can be done. It can be done. I hear a lot of comments tonight with regards to roof heights, setbacks, lot coverages. I think, Council, through this process, you can't lose sight of the architectural value. If I would say my one passionate area or my one concerning area is just the monsters. I think the bylaw is not that far off. I'm sure it could be tweaked. I don't think it's that far off. Again, I demonstrated that I was well within the parameters, and we ended up at 2,800, and I believe it's in keeping with the neighborhood. I would actually like to hear Neil's opinion. I always see Neil walking his dog, but we've only chatted briefly. But embarrassed to say I'm not part of the Ratepayers Association, but I am a busy man. What I would like to ask is the monsters that are going up, and I will cite 2 examples in the Old Town Park area. The 2 houses adjacent to Greystones on Royal Road, they're identical, side by side, cookie cutter. Again, everybody has their own opinion. I don't think they have a lot of architectural redeeming qualities, truthfully, but I may be shot down for that. But I think architectural control and from a heritage aspect should be considered. And secondly, and more importantly, because I know that one is a little tricky to control, but the house about 3 doors down from on Wells Street on the west side, about 3 doors down from Wellington. I'd be curious, just off the top of my head, if that was compliant with the current zoning bylaws, because that, we go out for walks every night, and that's just monstrous. Like, it's just and actually, you know, I may be shooting myself in the foot, but I actually, again, the address is 5 Cameron Avenue, and I would actually invite everybody to take a drive by, and I would really be interested to see if somebody could drive by and say, that thing is, no way does that thing fit into this neighborhood. I would really be interested, and I would like to have a conversation and a dialogue to see what could be tweaked, because again, you know, I definitely respect everybody's viewpoint with maintaining the old heritage of the old part of town. But again, I would be curious, because if that, I think the other focus should be is if, sorry, one more minute, I guess.
One more minute.
If the zoning bylaws are looking at being tweaked or adjusted, what is the mechanism in place, or how difficult is it to get a minor variance? Because again, I do not consider myself a developer. I consider myself a very motivated, hardworking individual. But if somebody can come in, if a developer can come in, and I don't know the history of the one on Well Street, but if he can come in and say, okay, 1.5 or 35%, can I get 40%? Can I get a minor variance here, minor variance there? I don't know how difficult that is, because quite frankly, I didn't need one. I was well within the parameters and quite comfortably well within the parameters. I think we ended up at 30% lot coverage, but just wanted to give you some viewpoint from a fellow who actually built a house and, tore down a house and built a house, and it can be done with some consideration and some care.
If you could wrap up, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
I've got Councillors Maracas, Tom, and Humphreys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming and delegating. I agree with you. It can be done if you do it right. And I think what you've shown is the difference between a homeowner that's looking to make their forever home and the difference between that and a developer coming and maximizing profits.
Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask, through you, if I could, to the delegate, if the same question I asked Neil. So we have a Northeast Heritage Conservation District that was put in place, I think it was in 2006. Last term, it was an unsuccessful attempt for the south part of town. I'm not sure if Cameron Avenues would have been included in that or not, but and obviously it would have been different than changing the zoning. But my question is, would you prefer a Heritage Conservation District versus bylaw changes, or both? I just want to know what your perspective is, because, and I could have this wrong, but a lot of the architectural control and preserving a heritage neighborhood with that specific part of town, I'm not talking about the other neighborhoods from people tonight, in my opinion, a Heritage Conservation District would address better than changing the zoning. Now, that's just my opinion, and I could be wrong. So I just wanted to get your perspective. Would you rather a Heritage Conservation District or not? And would you, or both? I just want to know where you stand on that.
Mm-hmm.
Sir?
Well, I'm always afraid of slippery slopes. So, and I think we could be in that area, in that vicinity right now. And that's why it's so important, like Councillor Kim had said, for you folks to get this right. And I don't envy the position you're in. I'm not sure about site plan control, if that's the answer. With staff, if site plan control were to be in place, I would certainly vote for it to be expedited by staff, or as opposed to another forum. But I just think how it gets addressed, I don't have the answers. I think I share with Neil. I don't get the sense that the south part of town, I don't think there's a lot of architectural properties or architectural features that are consistent throughout. But I think there's got to be some common sense. And again, it's a slippery slope when you're telling people not, what they can and cannot do. But I think it's pretty evident that a 5,000 square foot box made out of stucco is not consistent. So again, I think we have to find that balance where there is some conformity to the surrounding area. And again, not to come back to our house, but that's what we tried to do. And I was, for a while there, I was public enemy number one for a while, but I've actually had neighbors come up in the last 10 years that, wow. So again, it can be done. Don't know if we have to go to the extent of a heritage control there. Councillor Tom.
Thank you. I just wanted to get your perspective, and anyone who was at the last Heritage Advisory Committee meeting would know how long the committee discussed the issue of stucco, and I think it was about maybe a 2-hour conversation about whether or not we should use it or not. So, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I think I know your home. It's really beautiful. And Councillor, absolutely right. And Councillor Maracas nailed it. I mean, your forever home, and when we have that thought process, that usually is what comes out of that. But what's key is, and I'll be asking staff later, is the architectural value of a property. You nailed it a little bit. Like maybe the percentage of the lot may not necessarily be the real problem. It is in some cases when they go too high and so on, but to keep the architectural features so similar to the area that you come in, regardless if it's two-story bungalow. I think it's really, really key. It's appealing versus something that sticks out like, doesn't belong, right? So thank you very much. I just wanted to say thank you for your consideration and making your neighborhood beautiful.
Just one last kind of tying in. I never did touch on this, but I saw earlier today when I was sitting in the gallery that the discussions were veering off onto property values, and I'm glad. I'm not sure which councillor kind of corralled that back into, me personally, that was way off topic. that was way off topic. You can't fight it. It's, you can't hold back somebody's ability to go and improve their property, again, as long as they're consistent with the bylaws that are in place. But thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. One more, Councillor. Thank you.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Rankel, so with your house, what's the height of your house?
I believe, I'm an old school guy, I believe it's 30 feet to the peak. To the peak.
Okay.
So to the top.
May I ask
so 29 or
staff question at this time, or?
Well, if you could just, because we do want to get staff into this, but if you could just direct your questions to Mr. Rankel, please.
Okay. Thank you. And that's great. So it's not a two-story home. Is it a two-story home? It is a two-story home. So 30 feet is, what's that, 10? Is that 9 meters?
So 10 foot, 8 foot, and then probably, I think we ended up with a 10-12 pitch. So again, a high-pitched roof, but again, very consistent with the, truthfully, I'm no architect, but I do know something about architectural design, and it is consistent with the Georgian style. So again, it looks like a 100-year-old house. But yeah, again, getting back to where it was 12 years ago, I don't think the bylaws have changed in the last 12 years, but we were well within all the parameters of setbacks, lot coverages, heights. So it can be done.
Of all the dimensions, the lot coverage and so forth, we heard, and staff will address this themselves, but Mrs. Gilliver earlier talked about the actual dimensions, and she did speak to me, and I have spoken with Mr. Ramuno in the past about this. Can you confirm, in terms of your process when you built it, was lot coverage confirmed and checked by staff at the beginning and throughout the building process?
Absolutely.
So someone came by and measured it again to make sure that it was in keeping?
Councillor Kim, it has to be, and I don't know, it's been 12 years since I built a house, but on the site plan you have to have lot coverage, and you have the percentages, setbacks. It's all on your site survey. It has to be all set. So that's why I find it interesting, like the question that the one lady, the one delegate had with regards to, is this house conforming? Like, that should really be a pretty over-the-phone answer almost, like, I'll call you back in 5 minutes and open up the file and, oh no, these guys had a minor variance, or no, yeah, they're within the setbacks and the lot coverages. Because that's my big concern, I'm not sure, I'm not close enough to it. That's my big concern, is that I can't see, because like I went through the process, I can't see these houses around town being compliant with the current bylaw. I can't. I don't know. Are they? So maybe that's something that could be looked at, as far as how easy, because again, the developers are gonna, I don't want to bash any developers in the room, because I'm kind of, I'm in the commercial side of things, but they're going to take advantage of it. They will take advantage of it, and they will exploit it, and they'll sell it, and they'll get out of town. So there is one builder in town, Estate Homes, who has built about 3 or 4 in the old neighborhood, and he's always been compliant. He's always and a great, nice stone, nice brick, nice, very quality product. And the fellow's built about 3 or 4 homes right in our area. Beautiful homes. I can't see anybody complaining about those homes. But
yeah, and
oh really? Okay.
Councillor Kim.
I think just to close on my comment would be that we can't regulate forever homeowners versus a developer, but clearly from all the discussions that we've had, it seems like having a happy medium with respect to the bylaws is necessary to have that balance, and I think over the next 2 months we'll find what that balance is, and that hopefully everyone will be somewhat satisfied with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting, just to go forward, it would be interesting to see, take the last 2 years, and if there were, whatever, 25, 30, 40 building permits issued in the last 2 years or 3 years, how many of those were compliant and how many did ask for minor variances? It'd be a very interesting piece of information. I don't know if anybody's undertaken that, but thank you for your time.
James Hogan, please.
Thank you, Council. My name is James Hoyes. I live at 44 Kitimat Crescent in Aurora, which is in the Aurora Heights area. I would like to say that I'm not against building. I'm not against expanding the size of your house, but I believe that it needs to be in a comparable size to the area. And I say that it's this reason, and I would support scaling to the neighborhood so that we can compare and not have a set thing. And here's my scenario. Based on my lot size, and roughly a 35% coverage, and I can go 10 meters, I could probably put about roughly 35 to 4,000 square foot on my lot, main floor only. And I can go up 2 stories, which is about 10 meters. And it would look great. It would dwarf everything around it. But even more, and this is what I find about the neighborhood I live in, my backyard, the level section of it, is probably 3 meters above my neighbor's house roof line behind me. So now my house is not only 10 meters high, but it's also probably another, I'm going to say 10 or 15 feet higher than his roof line. That neighborhood tends to be very hilly. So if you go up Crawford Rose and some of those houses, they scale up as you go up the hill. And if you were to add height to some of these smaller houses, beside a shorter one, it's not just 10 meters now. It's a lot more than that. So my neighbor was mad at me when I put a shed up. So I'm a very big proponent in looking at each of the neighborhoods differently for that reason, because the southeast area is very flat, where not so in my area. The other thing that I have a big concern about is if we change the lot setbacks, including the frontage. Right now, my house has a driveway beside it. I can fit about 5 cars in my driveway. If I put a garage there, move it forward a little bit, I can fit 1 car in my driveway, maybe 2, except now they're going to put a sidewalk there. So now what ends up happening is the amount of cars in my neighborhood would be on the street. There's already 4 to 5 cars in each driveway as it sits. So now we are looking at a lot more cars that don't have a spot in a driveway are now going to be on the road pending your bylaws. The other thing is I've got a tree in the front. It's a big maple. It's been there since I've been there. I've been there 22 years now. I'm the second owner. It was built in 1957. It's a raised bungalow. It's only about 1,200 square feet. But I would be destroying a canopy on that road to put a house. So I've thought about putting a second story, but I thought about it going, you know what, it doesn't have to be necessarily. 1.5 is okay. So I just encourage you guys to look at the whole idea, the neighborhoods that you're looking, they're very different. And this one here, big is not going to be good when you're in my situation where I can basically look over the top of my neighbor's house. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I apologize for getting your last name wrong. It was a miscommunication, broken telephone.
And it's okay, my writing's bad.
I have no speakers. I have no questions, so thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak that hasn't signed up? Anyone who hasn't signed up? You gentlemen have already spoken. Ms. Spitzer. Again, someone else?
I'm Joanne Spitzer. I live at 14 Big Wind Drive in Aurora. We bought there in 1969, and I've been listening tonight about people saying the changes they're making to the houses and what they're doing and things. Well, in 1978, we decided we have a 61.5 foot lot at the front. We decided we would like to add on to the house. So we had a 3-bedroom bungalow, and we took down the carport, and we planned on doing it. We had Harry Shaw plan it, and I know the Committee of Adjustment here was so pleased with his work. And he suggested, because we were on a hill, to lower our garage into the ground more. And this is where you can make variances. And so we put a 17 by 20 garage on with a 17 by 20 bedroom above it. I'm not kidding you. I have people stand across the road and ask why our house looks different than everybody else's in the subdivision, even though it looks exactly the same as far as I'm concerned almost. But we asked the town for 2 feet. Now there must be, I haven't measured it personally, but there must be at least 12 feet between the 2 eaves trough of the house next door and my house. And we asked for 2 feet extra. And the town said no, it wouldn't meet the permit plans. So we went ahead and we built at 17 by 20. But I'm just thinking, there are variances you can do, and by putting it down lower, it wasn't sticking up in the air and looking like it was an add-on, which some of them around the area are like that. But the thing is, there's things to be done, and I really think, I've been terribly involved in this town, and I really do think if you let these people take over with these big houses, they stand out, and they just, sorry, they look ugly. So that's what I'd like to say.
Sir. And I apologize, I don't know your name, so if you could introduce yourself, please.
So good evening. My name's Steve Williams. I'm at 182 Murray Drive in Aurora, and we've been there a little over 30 years. So my thought, just listening to the goings-on here, is that part of what needs to be thought about is the game is changing. If you look at neighborhoods like North York, and then moving up to Thornhill and Richmond Hill, this has been going on for years in terms of these monster homes being developed and built. And I'm quite familiar with the area in North York, and it used to look a lot like an Aurora. It doesn't now. So I think you've got to prepare yourselves to deal with these developers, because they're not very interested in your Aurora plan. They're interested in meeting their buyers' needs and maximizing their profit. And you can find them. And so they'll play the variance game to the max, and you can fine them $2,000, and they don't care. So to me, that's the issue. It's not business as usual. The game is changing, and you need to prepare yourselves to deal with that new reality. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Williams, thank you very much for coming. I just want to say I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.
Please. And then after, if you'd come and introduce yourself, please, and we're going to take a quick break.
My name is Miriam Grosvenor. I live at 19 Banff Drive. My husband and I bought the hole in the ground for our house in November of 1969. We married 6 weeks later, and on the 12th of March 1970, we took possession. So we've lived there. Our street's a block and a half long. Part of the half block was there with the original Aurora Heights development, and then we were added on. We have at least 3 sets of neighbors that are original to the street that were there with us. I'm not against development. I like the area that I live in. We have a 3-bedroom bungalow. It's built on a hill, and several of the houses are. Some of them have now been sold and turned into apartments. It's adding a great deal of traffic to the neighborhood, and that for me is an issue because it's turned a very quiet street, frankly, in some respects, into a speedway for several reasons that aren't necessary to do with that, but nonetheless, these cars are added. But I would say to you, we have a lovely young couple across the street from us who bought their house about 15 years ago, and they've just last year put an addition on the back. It's beautiful. Everybody in the neighborhood has supported it. It fits in beautifully with the house. Today, it went in last summer, fall. Today, as you walk around the neighborhood, you wouldn't even realize it was there unless you got out your tape measure and really figured it out. So it can be done beautifully and be supported by the people in the neighborhood. It's just, I dread having a monster overlooking me. And I am concerned about, you mentioned a particular house on Hill Drive. That house, I mean, I won't speak particularly, but some of these houses, I wonder if they're multifamily dwellings actually, and that also adds a number of cars to a neighborhood. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Mr. Clerk? if we could resume, please. Council, please. Councillors. Councillor Gartner. If we could resume, please. I got a flight to catch in the morning. Council, if we could resume, please. Thank you. Yeah, I think we went through all our speakers, and we appreciate everyone. Council, if someone would put just a second, actually, before we put the item on the floor, there was a number of questions that came up, I think, that bear Mr. Ramuno's input, and one of them is on compliance and what that means, because we do have a committee of adjustments that we use. Also, with respect to how do we determine, Mr. Ramuno, whether a house complies in terms of lot coverage and things like that, and then we're going to put the
Certainly. To you, Mr. Mayor, and this question has come up, and we heard the same question at the open house back in February. So when an applicant, a homeowner, has plans to add an addition or a new build, they're required to prepare their architectural drawings. Typically, there'll be a pre-meeting with staff to make sure that their proposal complies with the existing zoning standards. If they do, with respect to height and coverage setbacks, the application will be reviewed from a zoning perspective, also from a building code perspective, and within a couple of weeks, if it's a complete application, a building permit will be issued. Our building staff, our examiners, do review things like setbacks and height. They review the surveys that come in, the as-built drawings and the foundation surveys, etc. So I can assure council and staff and the public that they are reviewed for compliance. If an applicant is seeking exceptions to the zoning bylaws, such as an increase in height from the current standard of 10 meters or increase in lot coverage or any other standard, there is a process. They would then be required to submit a minor variance to the Committee of Adjustment. That's a public process, and area residents in the immediate area will be notified, and that application is then considered by the Committee of Adjustment. And there are a number of tests under the Planning Act with respect to whether a variance would be considered minor and would be supported by planning staff. We prepare a report to committee. Committee of Adjustment would ultimately render a decision, and only if the decision is to approve and it's final and binding, do they then get that exception and are then in the position to get a building permit for that additional exception to the zoning bylaw standard. So there is a process that staff follow and the applicants are required to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Okay, before I take speakers, I would like someone to put the item on the floor, please. And at this point, I would suggest we wait until the end of council discussion for council direction. So would someone move and second that for me, please? Yeah, but I'm suggesting that we wait, we have a discussion, and then we go for direction. Okay, Mr. Clerk, you all right with that? So if someone would move and second that for me, please. Councillor Kim, someone second it for me, please? So at least have it on the floor to discuss. Councillor Humphreys, thank you. I've got Councillor Kim. Councillor Maracos, you had your name up.
I wanted to move to option 1.
Councillor Kim?
What page is option 1?
It's on page 13.
Option 1 is on page 13.
Okay.
Councilor Tercetto.
Okay, we can move to option 1. Option 1. Okay. Councillor Kim?
So we're not, we don't need a second to move option 1. We're not dealing with that right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
option 1's on the floor.
Okay. Thank you. I would, I would concur in terms of moving option 1 to a future, to move this to a future public planning meeting. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. We've had a lot of comments and discussions here this evening and in the previous meeting about the footprint and current builds that have surpassed that footprint. And so can you confirm in terms of the process how town planning staff confirms the overall footprint, and throughout the building process, does the staff go in intermittently for quality assurance to ensure that the existing footprint is confirmed, please?
Mr. Ramuno, please.
Certainly. To you, Mr. Mayor. So when an applicant submits a building permit submission, along with the architectural drawings, it's a site plan or a plan of survey is a requirement. Plan of survey is obviously done by an Ontario land surveyor, which identifies the lot size, configuration of the lot frontage, lot area, and then when the architect or the designer places that home, one of the requirements they have to identify is the footprint, which is the lot coverage, the floor area of the building envelope. And that's part of the submission, and our building staff, plans examiners, that's the first thing they review from a zoning perspective as to whether it complies with not only lot coverage based on our current zoning standard, but also building setbacks, front yard, rear yard setback, and then with respect to the building height, they confirm the height as well, and we've had that discussion with respect to that's based on average, from the average grade to the midpoint of the slope. And then those plans are also reviewed from a building code standpoint.
Councillor?
Thank you. So, Mr. Ramuno, is it safe to say then that the homes, the large monster homes that's been quoted, that's been built on Glass and Seton and Fairway, all those homes are within the 35% footprint and was measured during the build and at the completion?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, a number of those homes that were identified even earlier on complied with the current zoning provisions, being the 35% and the 10-meter height. They were verified by staff. There are a few that sought minor variances. I mean, one of the speakers mentioned, I think, one of the homes on Wall Street. There was an increase in lot coverage there that was reviewed by the Committee of Adjustment and approved, but the majority of homes that have been raised over the past couple of meetings do comply with the existing zoning standards.
Councillor Kim?
Okay, thank you. And in terms of the minor variance with respect to the footprint, how high can it go in terms of the footprint? Can it go up to 40% or 38%? What metric is a minor variance?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So with respect to review of a minor variance, the Planning Act, provincial legislation sets out sort of the 4 tests in reviewing a minor variance application. So that's something that staff takes into account. And the 4 tests are essentially, meeting the general intent of the official plan, the zoning bylaw, and the 2 real key tests are whether it's deemed to be considered to be minor in nature and if it's suitable and appropriate for the area context. So staff do review those, prepares a report to the Committee of Adjustment. I mean, one thing to keep in mind as well is they're considered each individual application on its merit. One thing to keep in mind with respect to some of these zoning provisions, performance standards, lot coverage, it's also based on lot size. So there are a variety of lot sizes. So depending on how big your lot is, obviously a 35% coverage would allow a larger footprint on a larger lot, obviously. I mean, the height is obviously fixed, it's regardless of the size of the lot, but a lot coverage really varies based on the size of a given lot, and we know that there are a variety of lot sizes, throughout town and in these three neighborhoods that are part of the study area.
Councillor Kim?
So I think I heard that there really is no absolute number in terms of lot coverage, but it's a moving target. Is that right?
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, if we take the current R3 zone of 35%, over the last couple of years, I think we probably see on average, we've been seeing about half a dozen variance applications within these areas. I mean, that may grow over time, but it's for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's height. Lot coverage, to be frank, we haven't really seen many of them. We have seen, in the one instance, a bungalow go from 35 to 40%. So it's typically in the range, and again, it's based on the application. I don't think I've seen anything go much higher than 40% in the recent past, and in that one instance, it was for the purpose of a single story.
Okay.
Councillor?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I think it's important that residents know the integrity of the process, because just having bylaws and putting numbers around bylaws, it doesn't really mean anything if staff is not following a certain process and that the integrity of the process is preserved. I think one of the options that we have in our tool now is just ensuring that 35% is 35%, because it certainly sounds like there could be, these minor variances. That 5% is quite large, and even though it might have happened just once or maybe twice, that possibility can certainly extend the the intent of the original zoning, and so I think that's important. So thank you for clarifying that, and I think that's it for me for now. My first round.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Bruno. Mr. Bruno, you've provided examples from Brampton and Halton Hills as well as Newmarket. And in looking at the dates that they established it looks like Brampton's had this in place for about 4 years, Halton Hills about a year, and Town and Newmarket probably around 4 years as well. In addition to getting to the specifics, the numbers, did you have a chance to talk to them about how effective it's been since they've implemented? I assume that they went through this process because they heard similar comments from their residents and similar concerns that we heard tonight. And so I'd like to get a sense whether or not we've actually had conversations with them to see, has it been effective in addressing the challenges, in enabling, more conformity or addressing the issues of incompatibility? Because the report's good when it talks about technical details, but it doesn't necessarily say how effective it's been.
Mr. Bruno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, then I may just ask Lawrence to jump in because he's done a lot of this research as well. Okay. The one thing we've heard from, and most municipalities have faced this challenge, and they've had this discussion and debate with respect to dealing with these infill issues with respect to new development or additions within existing more stable neighborhoods. And as a result, a lot of municipalities, and we've heard from some of the speakers, have undergone these same type of reviews. With respect to, since they've implemented the changes, I know I've had some discussions with a couple of municipalities. They have been, relatively minor, it could be subjective, but they have made some tweaks. And again, in some of these areas, the areas aren't significant in size, but they have been seeing, applicants coming in and, obviously respecting the changes, and once those zoning changes are put in place, the message the direction from a council to staff and the committee of adjustment is that, those variance applications, future variance applications, likely, if they're significant, aren't going to be supportive because you've gone through a study. The one thing, just to clarify, we've heard from a couple, our examples with respect to some of the municipalities, like the Brampton example, and I believe it was Halton Hills, have also amended their official plan. They amended their official plan to include similar language that we've already got in our official plan with respect to the broad language regarding, protecting stable neighborhoods, design policies, those general statements which you find in a lot of official plans. So some of those municipalities just brought their official plans, up to current standards, and we've had ours in place since 2010. But unless, I'll turn it over to Lawrence if he's heard from the Brampton, his discussions with Brampton and Newmarket with respect to how implementation is going.
Lawrence?
Sure. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the interviews that we had with the city of Brampton has indicated there's approximately about a dozen site plan applications they get a year to go over some of these mature neighborhood reviews. And the process has been fair. Although they did receive a number of minor variances as well. I don't have a figure to that, but in the interview with the official in City of Brampton, they indicated that most property owners had more issues with the setback requirements as established, and although they have seen a mixture of variances for the height at 8.5 meters. But overall, it has been a mixed review. It hasn't been overly burdensome. Like I said, it's only about a dozen applications in a year's time frame. And they are currently looking to review and possibly expand their inclusion of who will be subject to the site plan application process. Currently, I believe it's only limited to single detached homes, but they also they're considering to expand it to semi-detached or townhouses as well. And similarly with the town of Newmarket, it's been in place for quite some time, but at the moment there is a consideration of hiring a consultant to review the standards, so that it's inconclusive right now on how well it's going at the moment for Newmarket.
Thank you, Lawrence. Councillor.
Thank you, and I guess through you to either Mr. Ramuno or Lawrence, my reading of what Brampton's done in Halton Hills, they certainly believe that the site plan process is one component that helps it, but it's really specific to where there's an increase in gross floor area in the case of Brampton, and or just a general increase in the overall size. I think in Halton Hills they use a percentage, because I know you say that there's only 12 units, so am I correct in my understanding that it's only when the gross floor area exceeds a certain amount in Brampton that it triggers that site plan approval process?
Lawrence, do you have that? Or Mr.
To you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think Councillor Thompson, the rear yard setback, deals with sort of a percentage of the lot size. But our understanding is they've amended their site plan to include all single detached housing, new single detached housing under site plan control in their given study area. Okay, no, Lawrence is correcting me. They have set a benchmark that any building addition or new dwelling with an increase greater than 50 square or 500 square feet approximately, or a detached garage would be subject to site plan control. So that would eliminate any minor addition. So anything over 540 square feet or a new detached garage would be subject to site plan control. So those are provisions that we could also consider putting in place.
So I certainly support the motion in front of the floor, and I think that one of the things that I noted about those two particular plans, Halton Hills and Brampton, is that they've established a little bit more of a stringent process for those applications that you see a notable increase from the existing build form to whatever is being planned going forward. And I think that we need to have something that kind of raises those red flags and gets a more thorough look and examination upon. So as we go to the next step, I certainly think we should look at ways in which to identify what needs to have further discussions or further processes applied to it.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. And before I begin on some remarks, the motion on the floor talks about a future public planning meeting to consider specific changes to the zoning bylaw regarding stable neighborhoods. But I guess it's a point of order or just a question of process. So how are staff going to understand what changes we're going to be considered and what area we're talking about? Because the study area of the stable neighborhoods that includes the neighborhoods with the residents here this evening were more limited in scope than the general stable neighborhood designation within the official plan. So this is unspecific. So that's number one. And which specific changes to the zoning bylaw are going to be proposed at the public planning meeting? Because I don't think it's helpful to go to a public planning meeting without a proposal for specific changes. So if we need to provide that direction to staff now, I'd like to get an answer on that, because we're it's a pretty vague motion that's on the floor, and it's hard to know how to frame my remarks when I don't know what specific changes to the zoning bylaw and where they will apply.
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Next steps. So the option one that we've identified in our report does speak to proceeding a future public planning meeting, but we are also, staff, would require some direction from council with respect to what sort of specific changes we want to identify in a future notice for consideration at this public planning meeting with respect to those changes to the bylaw. And we've heard some consistent messages from the residents in attendance with respect to reducing height and lot coverage, reduction in lot coverage are the two key standards. Also, we need to be specific with respect to identifying the areas. I mean, we do have the current study area before council in the report. It was essentially the same area that was subject to the interim control bylaw. Council can provide direction with respect to maintaining that specific area, enlarging it, reducing it. But I think if we do go forward to a public planning meeting, the notice will have to be specific to residents that we are considering changes to the existing zoning that affects their property, and identify what changes we're looking at and the area. And we will have to be clear with respect to what area, because we'll have to send out our notices to all the individual property owners. Under the Planning Act, we'll have to provide a minimum of 20 days before we actually hold that public meeting.
Thank you. Well, we've done none of that with this motion. So I don't know who moved. If Councillor Kim and Councillor Humphreys moved and seconded the motion. My question is, what's their thoughts on what was just said? I mean, we haven't outlined what area we're talking about, whether it's the entire stable neighborhood designation within the entire official plan, or whether it's just the study area. We haven't talked about what specific changes we're looking for. So now if we're looking to make amendments through the course of the discussion tonight, that's fine, but I just think we have to be clear, as Mr. Ramuno said, what specific changes are we looking for and where? And so my question just to begin with was, it's not really that clear in the motion that's on the floor. So, I mean, until that is made clear, it's hard to frame our remarks. It can't pass the way it is, because it just, so I don't know where to go from here, I guess, is my point.
Mr. Ramuno, can you help us?
He just did.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to be clear, and I can look to I guess the clerk. The motion, my understanding was the motion that was tabled was option one that's found on page 13 of 15. I'm not sure if the clerk can put that up on the screen just so it's clear to everybody. But again, with respect to the question of proceeding to the public planning meeting, I mean, there are two things. I mean, we could, depending on the direction from council, we could go forward with a notice that identifies, general changes to the zoning bylaw based on discussions we've had here tonight, we've been taking notes. It's, again, as I mentioned, reduction in height primarily, reduction in lot coverage. And again, the area, what we've heard from a number of the different speakers is, they are looking for site-specific zoning for some of their neighborhoods. I mean, that's something that could come out of a future public planning meeting when we hear from additional residents at that future meeting. But if council wants to provide us some direction with respect to the changes, and what we've heard is, again, as I mentioned, height and lot coverage are the two big issues that we've been hearing from the public, and the study area. Again, we've heard from, I think, speakers from the three neighborhoods, being Town Park area, the Regency Acres area, and the Aurora Heights area, north of Wellington Street, as we've identified in our map. So, if that's council's wishes, I'm comfortable preparing a notice to that effect. But again, I mean, this is the opportunity for council to provide that direction.
Councillor Tom, the clerk is changing to reflect what is in the report.
Right, and I appreciate that. But still, to consider specific changes is still within that, and we're not being very specific. But to me, the crux of this issue from a kind of 30,000-foot level is the stable neighborhoods of the study area are talking about more of these, single detached homes that perhaps have a more bungalow or 1.5-story type of built form. The street I grew up on in Aurora is Lanewood Drive. It's not part of the study area, but it's in a stable neighborhood. Now, the homes on the top end of Lanewood Drive are probably, I don't know what they are. I don't know what the zoning bylaw was when they were built in the 80s, but on the top end of Lanewood, they're probably close to 10 meters, if not 10, in height. And the homes at the bottom of Lanewood Drive are bungalows. Some of them are anyways. And I'm not sure why they decided to do that when they planned Lanewood Drive, but certainly the developer was certainly allowed to build higher than the bungalows he did at the bottom of the street, but he didn't, or she, whoever it might have been. My only point is that stable neighborhoods as a term in our official plan is a much more all-encompassing term than just the areas we're talking about. And to me, it's the compatibility of the R3 zoning, which I think pretty much all of the stable neighborhood, there's some other zonings in the stable neighborhood area. I think there's some townhome developments and stuff like that. But it's really the impact of the R3 zone within the stable neighborhood. But that has a lot more relevance to areas in town that aren't included in the study area. So I think we should be specific to whether we're just looking at the study area or whether we're looking at the entire stable neighborhood designation in the official plan. I'm coming up to my time for the first go-round. So I guess I'll just wait to hear what we have to say, because the motion isn't specific, and so again, I don't know if the movers and seconders would like to get specific or if someone's going to make an amendment, and because I'm running up on time, I'll save the rest of my remarks for the second 5 minutes.
Mr. Muno, to Councillor Tom's point, are we not talking about the three specific areas that are outlined on page 17 of 18 in the report?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes. I mean, when we started the study back at the beginning of the year, the study area was based on that review that we undertook to identify that interim control bylaw area. And Councillor Tom is correct. I mean, that study area, those three pockets, are primarily those areas that are zoned R3 and that contain predominantly single-story dwellings. There are, the stable neighborhood designation under our official plan covers a larger area, and even within that stable neighborhood area, there's different zonings. There's not just R3. There are some zone categories for semis and some townhome pockets, etc. But the premise of the study area was based on that interim control bylaw, and really the criteria was to capture those areas that were predominantly zoned R3, that had those 50-foot frontages in areas that contained predominantly single stories, and again, areas where we were seeing some redevelopment of infill housing over the past few years.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas, does that help?
I guess so, but it's not specific to what we're asking. We're saying stable neighborhoods, so stable neighborhoods in the area is specific to what we're asking because staff always ask us to be specific, so.
That's a fair comment. And if you, so if you look at the areas that were defined with respect to the interim control bylaw, those are really areas that I would suggest are prone to redevelopment or short-term redevelopment as opposed to, say, where you grew up in Lanewood, which is not. So I'm just sort of, is that how we came to that in the first place?
So my point is this. Lanewood Drive has two-story homes built in the 1980s. Those are not going to stay up forever. Eventually, just from the progression of time, those are going to have to be ripped down and rebuilt at some point. They're not heritage homes. I mean, maybe they will be in 100 years. A councillor was born in one of those houses, so who knows how important they'll be. But my point is that we're not, so then the next council in many years from now will be dealing with it in the areas we're not talking about, because the homes right now might be 9 or 10 meters, but maybe they're not exceeding the proper, they're not going out to 35% lot coverage. I mean, so all I'm saying is that this is a complicated issue. Right now we're only focusing in on certain sections of our neighborhoods that are designated as stable, but there's many other areas in our town that are designated as stable neighborhoods that in the official plan have no less protection from incompatible development, and yet they're not being included as part of this discussion. I mean, I know the challenge there is going to be that if you start restricting zoning heights, zoning provisions in terms of height and lot coverages and setbacks and so forth, there might be a different perspective from someone who lives in, the Camano Drive area west of Crawford Rose than east of Crawford Rose. So so we can limit it to this, but I think we should be as specific as possible, and then know that further on down the road, we might run into problems as well. But I'm not speaking for a second time. That was an answer to a question, because I have some comments I'm going to make.
Fair enough. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And when I brought this motion forward and I discussed it with Mr. Runo, I was thinking of the established, mature areas. There's a lot of areas here that are called stable, but there's only a certain number that are have been built before 1980. So that would be, and I think what you have on this map, of course, the Town Park area was built way before 1980, but Hill Drive, or Aurora Heights, was the first subdivision in town, and the second one was Regency. And I think most of Regency was completed before 1980, although, Mr. Muno, were you able to find out when Simmons Crescent was built?
Mr. Muno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, to Councillor Gardner, Simmons Crescent, that pocket, that plan of subdivision was registered in 1982, so those homes would have been built in the early 80s. So that was one of the last
thank
phases.
you. So I think that's what we're going for. However you, this is a way to define older, mature, established neighborhoods pre-1980. And that would take in Aurora Heights, most of the Regency area. It was through you again, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Muno. Would a drive like Simmons be considered Regency Acres?
Mr. Muno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, that's a tough one. I think the neighborhood name of Regency Acres was established with that first sort of subdivision. I mean, Simmons is sort of just to the northwest on the fringe. People may refer to it as Regency Acres, but again, that was, that came, probably 20 years after the initial, or 20 years plus after the original Regency Acres subdivision was developed.
And they're two-story homes, they're larger homes, they're different. Those, we're not looking to include those kind of streets, I think. Fairway actually is part of Regency Acres and was built, I believe, pre-1980. We haven't included the Temperance Street area, and we haven't included Tyler west of the promenade, and I think that those two areas also need to be included. You know, we spent a lot of time on our draft zoning bylaw, but we never did look at the bylaw for stable neighborhoods. And our official plan is very clear that we need to be protective. It's very clear, it's very, there's a lot in it about stable neighborhoods. And it is in the Planning Act, and this is from one of Mr. Muno's reports, that when you form an official plan or you update one, the council has to make sure that the zoning bylaw is in keeping with the updated official plan. So I think we have a duty as a council to do that. I mean, it says in the Planning Act we have to do it in 3 years, so the OP was done in 2010. I think it's time, as somebody said, it's time to look at this. And Mr. Muno, as of about 4:30 yesterday, you had, I think, 11 emails against changing the bylaw and 35 for. And we received a lot of emails today. Do you know what the ratio is now?
Mr. Muno?
Mr. Mayor, you know, the ratio of those requesting a change and those not requesting any changes is about the same. You know, I think we've received another half a dozen emails today that I forwarded to council where you weren't copied, and 3 or 4 of those were requesting no change. A couple of them wanted some change. So I think, you know, the ratio is about the same with respect to majority of the emails received are requesting some type of change.
Thank you. And my read of the emails today was that there were a lot that were, a lot if not all, were requesting change. But we had received emails from some of those people already, so we can't double count them. I have to say that I'm really disappointed in how long this process has taken. We started October 24th. Now, we don't have a choice. If we want to do this in this council, we have to go to a planning meeting June 27th. And then we have to agree to have a GC and a council meeting in July. Because after that, we could be a lame duck council. So we are really under the gun here. And so the motion that's on the table is the only possible motion if we're going to try and complete this process and not go through it all over again in the next council. So I thank Councillor Maracas for noticing that. Mr. Muno, if you could, when we come to public planning, could you please look at the issue of accessory structures? Because we can have, at this point in time, we can have 35% lot coverage, and we can have up to an additional 15% in accessory structures. And a 15% accessory structure could be equal to a 4-car garage. That's a lot of accessory structure. Could you, through you, Mr. Mayor, could you comment on that?
Okay, and then I'll ask you to pass the floor.
Yeah.
You're at time. Mr.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. The current zoning bylaw in the R3 provision, the 35% coverage is for the main dwelling, but there is a accessory structure provision that allows up to 15% additional coverage for an accessory structure such as a shed or a detached garage. So you add the two together and you could be at 50%. So if council wishes, that's something that we can take back and review and report back on.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramona, could you speak quickly to the time that's been spent on putting this together? I see that other municipalities have taken a lot longer and hired consulting companies to help them. Could you speak to that process, please?
Certainly to you, Mr. Mayor. And I understand, you know, appreciate the concerns and frustrations, but again, we've been at this since council originally directed us with the motion back in November. We're in May, we've had an open house, and this is sort of our second meeting, so we've been at it for 6 or 7 months. The review has been done by essentially myself and Lawrence here. Other municipalities, have been at it a lot longer. I mean, it's minimum is about 1.5 years, in some instances up to 3 years, and they have retained consultants. So, I respect council's direction. We've been working as hard as we can, but 6 to 8 months really isn't a really long time to try and complete something like this. And again, we're not near completed yet, because the next step, if we proceed, is to go to the next step of a public planning meeting, and then a future GC council meeting for a recommendation and consideration of amending zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Are there other speakers to the item, please? Councillor Tom.
Thank you. So the answer I'm getting is that we're only looking at these study areas. So I'm going to raise a little bit of a challenge with that. So the Heritage Conservation District that's currently construed in the Northeast Heritage Conservation District currently has R3 zoning predominantly. There's maps at the end of the report. I'm pretty sure that the area included there is within the R3 zone, or some of it, not all of it. Anyways, I mean, unless I hear, is it not?
Correct. The Northeast District, is stable neighborhood. It's not included in the study area. The majority of that area is zoned R3, but there's also pockets of R7 zoning, which permits same standards, but it just permits more than singles. It also permits semis and triplex and fourplex.
Right. So based on the fact that, as Mr. Amuno indicated, we're only looking at the study area, so that area of town is not going to be included. Temperance Street's not going to be included, based on what's on the floor. Just like to point that out. Again, my interpretation of this issue is that it's with respect to all stable neighborhoods within the official plan and the R3 zoning and how it applies to that. I know that I see some disagreement, but I just think that my opinion is that's the crux of this issue. I know that there's some different built forms and different sizes of developments within our own stable neighborhood designations, but I think we should look at all of it. And whether or not we want to make changes to part of it at the public planning process is a totally separate matter. But just to not include some other areas, in my opinion, would be a missed opportunity. Part of the motion, though, talks about implementing other planning tools, such as site plan process or design guidelines, and then to identify the areas that proposed amendments would apply to. On page 13 of the report, use of other planning controls, something that's not really mentioned in the motion, and I'm curious as to why, is the use of a heritage conservation district. And is that something that will be looked at as an option for part of the study area moving forward to that public planning meeting?
Mr. Middle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, we identified those other planning tools, the Heritage District, primarily. I mean, it's something that, it is another tool. I know it's something that we considered a number of years ago for the southeast quadrant of town. We did hear that comment from a number of residents, but it wasn't my intent or recommendation to recommend that we proceed down that road at this point. Again, that's, I'm in council's hand with respect to that, but it is another tool similar to the site plan process and urban design guideline process that we've heard some discussion around this evening, primarily from the town park area residents, who seem to be in favor of not only the zoning changes for their area, but also to subject any new development to the site plan control.
Thank you, and I'm just going to take some time because I think it's important to note that we're looking at this from a zoning bylaw standpoint, and yet we've heard that our current Heritage Conservation District has a number of policies within it, even though a large portion of it is still R3. with 10 meters, 35% lot coverage, setbacks are the same. But the Heritage Conservation District Guide, and I know the members from the town area ratepayers know this pretty well, but I just think it's interesting to read what the provisions are. And I think they are applicable to what, at least with that specific part of this discussion with respect to Town Park, is applicable to this as well. So again, reading from section 9.5, which is new development within the old Northeast Heritage Conservation District Plan, it talks about design of new houses to reflect one of the local heritage architectural styles. Respect the history of the development of the district by using a style suitable to the immediate neighbors. The Fleury Street subdivision uses Edwardian and arts and crafts styles, for example. West Catherine Avenue on the west side of South Spruce Street are predominantly Victorian. Hybrid designs that mix elements from different historical styles are not appropriate. Historical styles that are not indigenous to the area, such as Tudor or French Manor, are not appropriate. It goes into more details with respect to that. It goes down to, on the next page, to guidelines. New buildings should be designed to preserve the scale and pattern of the historic district. New houses should be no higher than the highest building on the same block and no lower than the lowest building on the same block. And it goes on and on with respect to character. I mean, it's a pretty extensive plan. But my point is that this addresses a lot of the issues, I think, with respect to the town park area, with the kind of heritage homes, the 19th and early 20th century homes that are listed on our list of a registry of listed and important heritage homes. And I think it should be included as an option. I know it was voted down last term. My personal opinion is I think that was a mistake, but I wasn't on council at the time, so I wasn't able to have a seat at the table for that discussion. So I know, again, I'm running up on my time. I think we should be looking at all the stable neighborhoods with respect to the R3 zoning, not just the ones in the study area when we move forward. And I also think that Heritage Conservation District, at least as an option, should be put forward, not specific to the exact same boundaries as the previous one from last term, because obviously Temperance Street wasn't included and there was commercial buildings included as well. But I mean, I'd also encourage residents who are here tonight to perhaps reread or read for the first time the current Northeast Conservation District Plan, look at the policies in that plan, and decide whether or not they think that that is something that they would be interested for their neighborhood. So those are my comments moving forward. And so I'd be interested to see what comes back based on the motion on the floor to the public planning meeting.
Thank you. I'll go to Councilor Maracas for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I'll agree with Councillor Tom. I think that we're missing an opportunity if we don't include the whole stable neighborhood area. What we're looking to do is go to public planning and for us to have those options presented to us and then at that point hear from the public and make those final decisions. So if we exclude certain parts of the stable neighborhood, well then we'll never know if people within those areas would like to be included or not, and we'll be missing the boat, as Councillor Tom mentioned, and I agree with that. And I think allowing for that option for a heritage district should be on there as an option. That's what we're supposed to be doing, is exploring all those options. So I'd like to see all those options when we move to public planning and hear from the public and be able to make an informed decision. I do share some of Councillor Gartner's concerns as far as the time frame. I understand it takes a lot of time, but when I'm looking at what we have in front of us, in essence, all we're doing is we're saying we want to go to public planning. And at that time, we'll explore those options to make the decisions. I think we could have probably got to this point maybe about 2-3 months earlier. You know, I understand and I appreciate the fact that staff have done a great job trying to pull everything together and all the information. I just think that when everyone's looking at what we're doing tonight, I think we could have done it about 2 months ago, at least. But I think, you know, we heard from everyone. I think everyone around this table, I think, agrees it's not the fact that we don't want to see development, we don't want to grow. I think, you know, the development community and the builders probably think I'm a little hard on them at times, but I think that's because my job is to make sure that the best possible thing happens for our town, the best possible development. You know, a lot of developers come into our town and they say that they're helping to build a community. There's a big difference between building a community and building our community. And so I'm always looking forward to put forward things that help build our community and make it the best it can possibly be. And so I think that at the end of the day, what we need to do is to change the zoning so it meets the intent of our OP. I think at minimum, that's what we need to do. And I think by going this route, that's what we'll do. And as we heard from one of the delegates, the game is changing, and we need to make those changes that will allow the vision that we've created for our town moving forward to be realized. And so those are just my comments right now. I'll probably have a few more a second time around. I'd just like to hear a little bit more from my colleagues.
Councillor Kim, first time. I'm sorry, no, it's your second time, so I'll go to Councillor Gardner, excuse me. And if you put your name back on, Councillor Kim, apologies.
Thank you. Possibly the whole town will be under attack in the future from developers. Perhaps all land in all municipalities will be under attack. But right now, what seems to be, to Councillor Tom's point, or to explain where I'm coming from, right now it seems to be that developers are interested in the large lots and that have the smaller, older homes. And those primarily are in the areas that we've studied. We did have a gentleman come forward, Mr. Arcand, and he was talking about, he lives, I think, on Hillview, and they have big homes in Hillview, how developers are coming in and building even bigger homes on Hillview, and can we please protect his area? And Hillview isn't even included in the stable neighborhood designation, if I'm reading this map correctly. I would like to start with the older homes on the large lots, because those are the ones that developers are really interested in at the moment, and we need to protect them. Those homes are going, the homes that are going up, well, we've seen the homes that are going up. They're neighborhood busting homes, and we need to protect the neighborhoods. With respect to the heritage area, to try and figure out if this part of town wants to be a heritage area or not, that's going to take a long time. It's going to be a long process. I think in the meantime, we should protect them. And exactly, thanks for the point, we should look at what's in the Northeast Heritage area and see what we can take from there to try and protect the town park area. But I really don't think we have the time to be discussing whether we should turn this into a heritage area, whether we should try this again. That was a very long process, as Councillor Humphrey, 2 years, as Councillor Humphrey knows. I kind of like the idea of it. I'd like to know what the residents think. With respect to, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, to add Temperance Street and the part of Tyler that's west of the promenade, or maybe Mr. Clerk, do I need to make a council motion for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I would appreciate a motion to expand the study area, just so we're clear what areas we're looking at.
Thank you. With council's approval, I would like to add those two areas to the public planning meeting.
Is there a second? I'm sorry?
Unless it's friendly, that we're all good with that.
It's an amendment. It's an amendment?
So the amendment is to add Temperance and Tyler, is that correct? What part of Tyler?
Yeah, Tyler west of the promenade. Mr. Muno, is that correct?
What part of Tyler? All of Tyler?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and with my discussions earlier, I think it's Tyler Street, just west of Temperance Street, which includes the R3 zones. So that's my understanding. And that pocket of Temperance Street.
The residential pocket of Temperance Street.
Is there a second? Councillor Humphreys, to the amendment? Strictly to the amendment, please. Councillor Marakis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, to the amendment, while I agree, I would like to see it, as we stated, why not just include everything? Because when you look at it, when you look at the Northeast Heritage District, we dealt with one just recently where the OP says 9 meters on height, and the zoning says 10. And so we need to clean that up as well. And so that's why I'm suggesting, as Councillor Thomas, is include everything and have all those options. I agree to this, but let's expand it and just have it all stable neighborhood, and we can have that discussion at public planning, and we can whittle it down from there of what we want to be specific to.
Councillor Tom.
I totally agree. I think that I'll be against the amendment because I think we should be including stable neighborhood, just full stop. And I think it's interesting that Councillor Gardner mentioned that these neighborhoods are more mature versus the neighborhoods that were built in the 1980s. But mature, I suppose, is fairly subjective because you know, in 20 years, those homes built in the 1980s will have been 50 years old, and now they're mature, but they haven't changed. Nothing has changed about the home other than its age. And so, you know, if we're looking at the compatibility of the R3 zone with the protections in the official plan of stable neighborhoods, I think we have to look at the entire stable neighborhood designated areas, not just the ones that were indicated in the study area. A lot of talk today was about monster homes. That seems to be the kind of, you know, colloquialism that's arisen to describe homes in a bungalow area that's 2 stories. But you know, I grew up in a neighborhood that had 2-story homes. If they were compliant or around where the zoning bylaw is, then I wouldn't consider those a monster home. Now, it depends maybe on the neighborhood that they're in, whether they're a monster home or not. Compatibility that the official plan talks about doesn't necessarily talk about size and scale only. So there could be a scenario where in another part of town that's maybe not quite as mature as Regency, but in my opinion, I mean, I was born in the 80s. I think I'm pretty mature, but again, that could be debated as well. But again, I just think that when we focus just on those specific areas, I think we might be missing something. I mean, again, just by way of clarification, I'm not in favor of major changes to the zoning bylaw anyways. I'm in favor of looking at staff recommendations for moderate changes that are a bit more in line with what most people in town think are compatible. However, I think that has to be consistent. I think if we're looking to zone different parts of town site-specific, but I think we should look at the R3 zone as it applies to the entire stable neighborhood designated area and go from there. And again, if we want to start looking at site-specific areas and different zonings for different areas, we can look at that, but I think we have to look at the entirety of our stable neighborhoods because the official plan does talk about protecting those neighborhoods as well from incompatible development. And so if R3 works in those areas, I just think we have to dig deeper into that. And so I agree with Councilor Maracas, we need to look at it all. So I'll be voting against the amendment, and maybe I'll make an amendment to include everything after, depending on how it goes.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Mono. Mr. Mono, before we go through the various amendments for all the zoning standards, was it your intent to make staff recommendations at that public planning meeting and then allow council to consider various options?
Mr. Mono?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, because it's going to be our first statutory public planning meeting. Again, the purpose of that is similar to this evening, is to provide that sufficient notification to everybody regarding the potential changes, get the feedback from those folks. We can certainly then outline next steps, and which we've already done in this report. But I think following that public planning meeting, it's no different than any public planning meeting that we hold that we require that's driven by a development application. I mean, we're driving this process, the municipality, but we still, under the Planning Act, need to hold that statutory first public planning meeting. And I think any recommendations would come from that, would follow from that public planning meeting, subject to direction from council to a future general committee and council meeting.
I appreciate the answer. I don't necessarily agree with it. at any public planning meeting we have, there's always at least a drawing, there's some sort of baseline from which to begin the discussion. I think that what would help this process if staff would utilize their expertise and knowledge and put forward a Made in Aurora solution, at least to start the discussion, because otherwise council's going to craft the bylaw and we're going to go through every zoning standard and we're going to have a debate whether it's 8 meters, 8.5 meters, 9 meters, and have multiple votes. So I think staff need to put forward their recommendations, it's including the zone areas, and then staff or council can have consideration about opening it up, closing it, and so forth. So that's my 2 cents.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I was thinking along the same lines as Councillor Thompson, in that when we're having this discussion about increasing the study area, and those new residents who did not realize that they're now going to be part of the study area is going to be drawn into this conversation, and they're going to be about 6 months behind in terms of massaging this in their heads in terms of what's going on. They'll have 1 month to decide, and I too also thought there might be some recommendations and options that we can use as a baseline for before we get to general committee and council decision in late July. Just to expedite this quickly, because I think this is being drawn on, I'm against the amendment. I'm fine with expanding the boundaries to include all our 3 areas so that we don't miss anybody, but at the same time, we may very well drag people in that quite frankly want to be missed. But that's fine. I think the conservative thing conservative route to go is to include everybody, have the communication, because we need to have the communication out and to know the boundaries. We need to make that decision tonight, and let's do that. Get the communication out, but I would certainly feel more comfortable not discussing the same thing, but just discussing the borders at the next public planning. I would certainly hope that we've heard recommendations by all the ratepayers associations and residents at the Aurora Heights. So I would like staff to come back with some specifics. Otherwise, you might as well just skip public plan, or just have a 30-minute public planning, kick everyone out, and come back for general committee, because I don't want to subject residents and council to another 4-hour meeting where nothing gets done but rehash the same thing. So I'm against this amendment. Let's go ahead with, someone can bring back for including all of our 3, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Maracas, second time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, if we didn't include any extra areas and we decided to keep it to the study area that's right now, would we be able to add on at the public planning meeting? Add on new areas, like add on to a bigger area, or would we be stuck with the specific study area once we go to public planning?
Certainly. It's, to you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, it's a good question. I just caution council, if you add on at that public planning meeting, we could be criticized if we do then proceed with changes that those residents weren't properly notified. And if I may ask Mr. Mayor, if I can ask Ishita to put up figure 2, just so it's clear to, I think, the public that are still here and for council with respect to, this is the figure in the report that identifies the entire area of the town that has that stable neighborhood designation under official plan. So it's a large area. I mean, it extends over, west of Bayview, that pocket. The hatched areas are those 3 neighborhoods that were part of the study area that were subject to the interim control bylaw. But, if council wishes to proceed to hold a public meeting and notify everybody within the stable neighborhood designation, that's the area that we're looking at. That's the entire part of town that has that stable neighborhood designation under the official plan.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno. Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the map, it is an incredible amount of space and area, but I just feel that there's a few areas that need to be included as well. As the Northeast Heritage District, as I said, I mean, the zoning does not align with the OP. We need to clean that up. We need to update that as well. And I hate to do that as a whole separate process and have that go through 6, 7, 8 months as well for that one when we can do it at the same time as this. But I do see that there's some areas within there that we probably wouldn't want to include. I'll see what the rest of the council decides.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Muno. Mr. Muno, with respect to the Northeast Heritage Area, can we pick and choose? Like, some of the things that we may be recommending for other areas are already covered by the Ontario Heritage Act. So, I mean, are we just trying to clean up the height? And can we say, with respect to the heritage area, we want the height to be X number of meters?
Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that would be one approach, because again, the Northeast Heritage District does have the extra protection under the Heritage Conservation Plan, but if we wanted to include that as part of the study area, I mean, the one thing that I think we'd be looking at changing would be to bring it in line with the height, lowering it from the current 10 to what we've been hearing is 9 or lower. So that's definitely one approach that I think is more than appropriate.
So to follow up, so that is, for clarification, that actually would be a site-specific, a neighborhood-specific particular change.
Mr. Miller?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. I mean, any amendments that are proceeding would be site-specific to any of these given neighborhoods in town.
Well, to avoid confusion, if we're going to include this, the notices that go out to the heritage area, can we just tell them that we want to we're thinking of changing the height from 10 to 9? Because if they just see a notice about all these changes, there might be some very unhappy residents that end up in the council chamber for no reason.
I presume that's not a question, because...
Well, I mean, but it could be a problem. Like the public planning meetings are already long enough.
It's a problem, Councillor Gartner, when we make a comment to staff that it's taken too long to get here, and yet we sit here and have a debate as to what should be the area. So we have our own challenge in terms of deciding what should or should not be in the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that this is just a very recent addition to the issue. I happen to agree with myself and Councillor Maracas that the fact that it's taken so long has put us in a very difficult position right now. That's my comment. Anyway, so we're still debating what areas should be added. My amendment was for Temperance and Tyler.
To your amendment.
My amendment is for Temperance and Tyler. So does anybody, do you want to add the Heritage District to the amendment? We really can't do all of the stable neighborhood. We can do it going forward.
We're talking specifically to your amendment, Councillor Gardner.
Okay. Then I'm done.
I'm sorry?
I'm finished.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tom.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and frame this as close as possible to the amendment, because I've already spoken twice to the main motion. This is my second time to this, but this is an immensely complicated issue, and it is something that has immense impact on the lives of everyone who owns houses in these neighborhoods. In many cases, it's their retirement, and it's massive. And while I agree that this perhaps could have been brought forward a bit faster, I also, honestly, sitting in this chair tonight, am thinking that something of this magnitude, although we are coming up to the end of a term, and who knows what will happen next term, But, I mean, we are still trying to agree on the area that we're going to be including going forward for the public planning. That's not even clear based on our discussions tonight. And so, let alone what the changes we're going to be putting forward at that public planning meeting, because nothing has been said tonight. I agree with Councillor Thompson that, recommendations from staff would be great, because at least that gives us a benchmark to talk about whether we agree or not. But as was mentioned earlier and is in the report, some of these similar studies and similar undertakings of different municipalities took years. I mean, our own comprehensive zoning bylaw review took 4 years to complete. And obviously, this is the first time as a special council meeting we're really getting into this as a council. So, I mean, I guess my thoughts more and more as we're moving through this process is, and I know this is probably going to go over not well with many of the residents in town, especially in these areas who are looking us to take action. But I mean, this is something that is of immense importance to everyone who lives in these neighborhoods. And I'm just, my worry is that we're trying to cram too much into time that just is starting to run out on this term. And so, that's why I think if we cast a wide net, then we don't have to worry about which neighborhoods are in, which neighborhoods aren't in. Perhaps staff can give us recommendations that are site-specific. Doesn't mean it won't go forward. But I just, this is something that has, like I said, I can't stress it enough. This is so super important, and it has, people's livelihoods are at stake. And to try and move quickly because our term is ending, I think would be a mistake. I don't know where that leaves me in terms of a decision on the public planning meeting, but I really hope that something comes back from staff that that looks a bit more like a recommendation that will help council kind of navigate through this a bit better. So that's my comment. Again, I'm against the amendment because I think it should be we should cast a wider net, but like I said, I think we should be cautious about moving too quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Any other speakers to the amendment, please? Seeing no other speakers to the amendment, using our tablets, please register your vote. We're all good. The amendment carries. Back to the main motion as amended.
Mr. Mayor, I did have the floor when I made that amendment. I'll step down if anyone wants to make another amendment.
You're on.
Thank you. Mr. Murnau, or through Mr. Mayor, maybe just to council, to council. A lot of people have said to me that they find it incredible that the 3 monster homes that we are talking, that started this, are within the zoning bylaw requirements. And I would like to ask staff to come up with some sort of process. I'm making a motion for staff to come up with some sort of process where these properties can be measured. If a resident wants to come and watch, so be it. But we have to put this to rest, because there are a lot of people that do not believe that these homes comply. There has to be a way to show them that these homes comply. So I'm making that motion. If anybody wants to, that staff come up with a process whereby...
Okay, well, that would be an amendment, and it's not a motion. It's contrary to the...
No, it isn't. It's an amendment to...
Well, no, I am actually saying it's contrary. So If you want to bring a separate notice of motion, that is fine. We can deal with it that way. Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't really, I wouldn't, I'm not too sure if it's contrary, but I think it is, it's completely separate than, it's not an appropriate amendment for the motion that's on the floor tonight that deals with specifically with stable neighborhoods. I think that would be more appropriate to be brought forward as a notice of motion at a future GC then council meeting.
Well, all I can say is that these are the 3 homes that started this whole process as to why we are sitting here discussing it. So I think it is irrelevant. Is relevant. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Councillor Kim, and before I go to Councillor Kim, can I have a motion to extend, please? Councillor Tom, Councillor Humphreys, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to just put my my opinion that we should move ahead with the main motion, and if option 1 requires more specificity, if that's a word, with respect to the area that's being discussed, then we put in the study area as verbiage. We've spent the last 6 months receiving feedback from the residents from this study area. I do agree that to a larger extent that, you know, in hindsight, perhaps we could have included all of R3, but given where we are right now, I think stopping the process, that doesn't sit well with me, given how far we are into this. I say we move forward with the study area, and should the next council, that's only 5-6 months away, should they want to expand that to include all of R3, that could be a phase 2. That phase 2 shouldn't take nearly as long as this, because we've already set the process in place. We would have chosen the options, whether it be the site plan, whether it be the specific dimensions. We have already decided on that in the July GC and council. And so all that the next council would need to do is to agree on adopting the current conditions that will be in place in November, December, or January. So I don't see that. I don't see expanding this to an R3 in a phase 2. I don't see that being a big issue, because a lot of the groundwork has been done here. So I would like to, you know, just move forward the vote and just let the area be the study area.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Marcus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kim, for your perspective. You've changed my mind as far as going to that full area. I agree with you on the point that we could look at it as a second phase. We do need to move ahead. We need to get this done. We spent a lot of time on this, and I think we owe it to the residents that have come out, have spent the last 6-8 months with us trying to come up with solutions on how we move forward. So I'll agree with you. I think that we can do that in a second phase if we have to and move forward. But like, I agree 100%. Let's move forward. Let's get this figured out. Let's come up with those solutions on how we protect our stable neighborhoods, and specifically more these specific areas that we've chosen that are considered more mature. And let's do our job. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramuno, do you need more yeah, that's easy for you to say, Councillor Kim, specificity with respect to the area that you're looking at? It seems to be the will of council that we're looking at the 3 study areas. Is that your understanding? Plus Temperance Tyler.
That's clear enough, Mr. Mayor. Yes. The
Is
study area with the expansion related to the Temperance Street and Tyler Street. That's clear, and that's how we would proceed.
You can ask a question for clarification.
Mr. Minow, is that does that include the area Metcalf North?
No. Mr. Muno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's part of that study area that's been identified in the staff report in front of council. I think it's figure 1 or figure 2.
Thank you very much.
Quickly, please.
Thank you. So my question is, the amendment we just talked about Temperance Street and Tyler Street west of Temperance.
Correct.
But Temperance Street is not all stable neighborhood. And neither is Tyler Street. Tyler Street only becomes stable neighborhood when you get about halfway between, that must be George Street and Tyler. So there's portions of Temperance Street and Tyler that are not stable neighborhood that will be included in, well, I'm just asking because it's saying Temperance and Tyler west of Temperance.
I'll go to Mr. Rumuno for clarification as to what his understanding is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, my understanding is the amendment would include those portions of Temperance Street and Tyler Street that are currently designated stable neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody clear on that? No comments or questions? Although it may seem that these meetings are sometimes futile, I don't believe they are. And we do get things done. It can sometimes take a long time to get there, like tonight. But the discussion is important because there's a lot of passionate feelings about this. And we need to take all those into account as we make our decisions. So using your tablets, please, councillors, on the motion as amended. That passes unanimously. If I may please have a confirming bylaw. Councillor Kim and Tom, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Motion to adjourn. Kim, Humphreys, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much for coming out. Those who stayed. Thank you, staff.